The multi-class affair of motorsports that is the BMW M SIM Cup makes its way over to Germany, and today at the Nürburgring we unleash the BMW M Hybrid V8 as well as the BMW M4 GT3 for one more multi-car affair here in the 2023 BMW M SIM Cup. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV and to the iRacing esports network for what should be an exciting 2 hours of action once again. My name is Arjuna, Kanky Party on hand with Ewan O'Leary to walk you through all the action. Don't forget you can follow along with live timing and scoring by heading to RaceSpot.tv/timing. Ewan, delighted to have you along for the first time this season. You were there with me at the end of last year when we wrapped up things in BMW Sim Live. Slightly different affair here in 2023.
Yeah, it's a very, very different situation to what we had last year, but very much looking forward to it anyway. It's a different style of racing, isn't it, really? And we've seen all kinds of different things happen. But I have to say, from the 10 rounds we had last year, the Nürburgring round was my favourite, so I'm very much looking forward to this.
I really enjoyed in 2021 when we came here for what was, at that point, one of our end-of-season events where there were two teams that would make their way over to BMW Sim Live. Even with just 16 cars, we had a really, really fun race. Really excited about what we've got in store for you today. Let's talk about your schedule very quickly, though, because we are rapidly approaching the halfway mark of this championship. And so it is going to be very, very exciting to see how Watkins Glen plays out. And then we head into the back half of the season, Ewan.
Yeah, where we've got some more European circuits as well, but also going all over the world, really. First visit to Fuji in the series, which would be nice. Road Atlanta is going to be a very narrow and difficult one, and to have Suzuka at the end could be tricky, but let's not forget by that point, a lot of the spaces up the top of the standings will already be taken, so maybe the pressure will be off by that point, but especially circling Road Atlanta there, because that's going to be narrow and it's going to feel quite claustrophobic for everyone.
I'm still wondering what TBA is going to be, but I've got my suspicions. I hope that BMW will at least listen to the thoughts that I'm sending out into the universe. I won't say what they are going to be, but there are 3 letters for the track that I'm thinking about as well. Here's a look at the format, because of course slightly different this year with no BMW Sim Live. The championship all decides the $47,000 prize pool and how we're going to pay it out. Remember, you score points in teams, Ewan, just as we did last year, with that extra 1 bonus point for the driver that sets the fastest lap. And much like last year, the podium all walks away with cash prizes.
Yeah, which is all good news. It all makes it quite awkward in the championship, though, as we're about to see, because the fastest lap, as you say, goes to a single driver and is not attached to the car, which means 2 people who traditionally stay together, like you generally do in these types of races, mean that they do find themselves separated on the standings, especially those up towards the front. So it can get a little bit messy and a little bit awkward at times as well, I'd imagine, when one teammate has got more points than the other, which is not something that often happens. Especially
because we are determining prize money based on championship standings. And with 3 rounds in the books, let's talk to you about these championship standings, because for Urano Esports, well, they are looking very, very comfortable in this brand new BMW M Hybrid V8. They have taken all 3 of the victories so far this season, albeit with 2 different driver combinations, most recently with Dylan Shrivens and Joop de Ligt in round number 3.
Yeah, a great win for them, but it really kick-started their season, because up until that point they hadn't had the best run of things, but now maybe this can set the ball rolling a little bit for them and they can start to do a little bit better. But it really has all been about them so far in the LMD8 standings, which has made it very different to the GT standings, because that has been all over the place. There's been no singular dominant team there.
The GT3s have definitely been a little bit more helter-skelter, and so we take a look here where it's now Chris Lullum, Diogo Pinto that lead in the championship as a team, although Lullum with that bonus point ahead of our iRacing world champion. In terms, though, of Urano, they started off very, very strongly. Alexei Nesov and Luca Keita are the ones that came out on top. Redline, though, who traditionally have made Daytona their stomping ground in the BMW virtual motorsports world, starting to come alive. Lullum and Pinto victorious in round number 2. And then most recently, Steinbratton and Vecchio able to take a great victory over in round number 3.
Yeah, and we'll see if that can maybe start to fester a little bit throughout the next few rounds, because they're starting to get into the swing of things, as you say. Normally they're right on it from the start at Daytona, but this time it's taken them a little while. we can see maybe those two cars up towards the front here today and maybe working together that little bit, because I think teammates are going to be important. If the fuel is going to be as much of a talking point as it has been in previous weeks, then I think teammates could well be the key to victory.
Especially in GT3, let's not forget. Let's talk about the track where we're racing today. Up from above, this Nürburgring Grand Prix layout isn't necessarily as fun as the full Nürburgring Life layout that we'll be racing at next week in the iRacing Nürburgring 24 Hours. However, at the end of the day, Ewan, you said last year was fun. I said 2021 was fun here. The BMW cars always know how to race well.
They do. The situation's very different to last year in my particular example, admittedly, because it was that race where we had the people doing 4 tyre changes, people doing 2 and people doing 0. That's not going to be the same here, but it's a totally different format, so we'll see what can happen. And to be honest, I think Nürburgring, in terms of lap traffic, is going to be one of those races where it's actually not that bad. It's not the widest circuit in the world, but it is one of those where if you do wait a corner, then you normally have a straight, at least a little bit of a straight, to look forward to and get past a GT. So traditionally, I've found it not to be so bad.
We'll see how it all plays out, though, with the racing. Qualifying currently underway, though, and so as we take a look at the drivers that are working their way around, LMDH is basically all done with their 2 attempts on track, and so currently it's Paddy Wolf again in the Apex Racing Academy car that sits up towards the front of the field. GT3s, we do tend to see lap 1 be a bit of a sacrificial lap, is probably the best way to put it, and so Arventus Racing, less sacrificial than everyone else, are 11 seconds clear. That's a margin that will surely hold up.
I was so confused when I saw that there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's the format we have now with the really slow first lap and then really stepping on it for the second. But it gets very exciting towards the end. As we saw at Road America, I think we had about 5 different pole sitters in the last 2 minutes.
I think we're about to see the same thing. So Luca Kita provisionally goes to the top. It's a 154.983. Now let's see the heavy hitters come, though. Reino Talvar won already. Redline and Apex have gone in front of Luca Kita's time. 55.364 for Reino Talvar, slightly off the pace, all things considered. And as Diogo Pinto, Sven Haase sit 1 and 2, I think realistically Luke McEwen was going to be the next car to maybe expect some sort of a surprise from, albeit his lap time gets invalidated. The Apex Racing number 99 is going to have a lot of work to do from the back of the pack.
Yeah, that's a bit of a nightmare for Luke McKeon up there in 3rd place, tied 3rd in the point standings at the moment. It's going to be one of those difficult ones in terms of going down towards turn number 1 here. It's a really awkward braking zone, and getting down towards that corner there can be very awkward. So I would not want to be starting at the back, or I suppose it's better than being right in the middle, but the back's not ideal either.
You know, the one thing that I'd be scared about is if I'm in the GT3 class, knowing that when the green flag flies for LMDHs, we go racing as well, and so you're probably racing into the chicane. Now, regardless of which chicane you run here at the Grand Prix layout, Ewan, we should note, fast or slow, it's not ideal for multi-class traffic.
Not particularly, no. I think this layout we've got here, the slower version, of course, is going to be better for overtaking. It's not as fun to drive, I would certainly go and say that, but it's going to be a little bit better for overtaking. Bit of a deeper braking zone, slightly uphill, which slightly reduces the distance, but it will be an opportunity. But you're right, it's going to be a very, very awkward moment in traffic.
Well, after 3 rounds in America, it was all Urano initially. Redline have started to insert themselves into the equation. We've made our way across the pond, and now with 3 rounds in the books, we're ready to go racing for round number 4 of the BMW M SIM Cup. Here's how they'll line up, starting with the LMDHs. Paddy Wolf in the Apex Racing Academy 198, 145.39, good enough to see him lead us to the green. He'll have Dominic Hoffman alongside, though, with just a 100th of a second splitting the front row. Eduardo Leo in the SRC Movano 369 as Valtteri Alander in that split-liveried BS Turner car for company on row 2. Williams Esports Mala and Obsidian Racing lining up on row number 3. From 7th spot, it's Dylan Shrivens, our previous race winner in the Urano Esports Huawei machine. He's got his teammate Jonas Walmar in the Urano Data Group car on row number 4 for company. Kenneth Gulbranson in a second Williams Esports car as a second Apex Racing Academy car. Danny Shibishabo on the edge of the top 10. Peter Zuba and then Timo Ruda in the Race Clutch and ART Sim Racing machines, 11th and 12th positions, with a slew of BMW factory liveries to follow. RD SimSport, Simsa Esports, RD SimSport, Virtual Drivers by TX3, The Office, and Samsoid Kanan Esports, the 18 LMDHs, with just Genesis SimSport behind them. running on the 19th position. Over to GT3s as well, though, because a numerous class. It's Diogo Pinto that's looking to try and put the disappointment of his World Championship campaign maybe to one side. He's got the brand new Grid and Go esports team and Sven Haase alongside in the 001. That's a little bit of a statement here today. Jimmy Antunes and then Leandro Angeruti for Apex Racing Academy and PGZ on row 2, with the privateer BMW SIM Cup entry and Florian Lebigra inside of Luca Kita and Urano Esports Huawei. Nicholas Rubelar in the first of the Arnage competition cars in 7th, and then the Zebra for BS competition, Julian Kessel in 8th position. Sam Koitert for Urano, Michael Yanni for Apex 9th and 10th, with hard modes Matti Siepola inside of Thibaut Prevost in a second Apex Arnage competition machine. The Ahmed School of Motoring powered by Kellogg's 099 inside of a second Zebra. Japard Esports locking out row 8 with MAG Performance SRT, ATRS Esports 17 and 18th, Delatraz Automotive, Arvensis Racing, Apex Racing Academy, Team Redline and Arnage competition rounding out the 23 cars. Watch out at the back of the pack for McEwen and Steinbraten, who have plenty of work to do. Short time here, Ewan. We're already rolling through the chicane. What are your expectations with 2 hours being thrown up onto the board?
Well, certainly a lot of action, and it's going to come very, very early as well, because this big run down towards turn 1, very wide, and then all of a sudden it gets very narrow around a very tight first corner. So let's see what happens.
We made our way over to Europe, and now we're racing for round 4 of the BMW M SIM Cup here at the Nürburgring. They fat out behind in the LMDHs, but it is Paddy Wolf that will lead us on that run down the hill into the first heavy braking zone. They will go 3 wide. They'll somehow survive it as well for the most part. Some of those BMW factory liveries going all over the shop. Into the arena they'll work, though, as the GT3s already up to speed plummet their way, Ewan, into turn number 1.
Yeah, it was RD Sim Sports' Mick Anderson, by the way, who was off on the inside towards turn 1. Bit of a cleaner start in the GTs, though, I've got to say. It was all very close and very nervous in the LMDHs. BS Turner got very, very close to making contact. Valtteri Alander was next to all sorts of people, but in GT3, it's a little bit calmer. The top 3 already making a break for it.
Important just maintain position. Ewan mentioned fuel saving, especially important when it comes to these GT3 cars that will only make one pit stop, and that's why inside of your top 10 they are single file. You see the double file formations a little bit further back. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher-S, that's where we find the LMDHs. Into the second and third sectors of the lap, still Paddy Wolf leading from Eduardo Leo, Dominic Hoffman, Valtteri Alander and Josh Ladd, your top 5. You'll note that the train extends backwards, Ewan, and we always talk about it. It's the first pass through traffic that is the most dangerous, when both classes are chock-a-blocked up, when both classes are at their most aggressive.
Yeah, because there's 18 LMDHs in a line right now, and all 22 of the GT3s. No, it's only the first lap, but all 22. So that's 40 cars basically in 2 separate trains. When those two smash together and one trying to come through on the other, it does get very, very busy, and it sort of defines the race. And in my opinion, you do want to be in the lead going into that, because either you get caught by second place, in which case you're still in the lead just with less of a gap, or things could go your way and you could end up with 3 or 4 seconds out front. So I would really want to be in the lead going into this traffic, and maybe Eduardo Leo does want to right now as well, applying that pressure to the leading car.
Really love these angles that we get in this virtual world. We can place the cameras wherever we realistically want it, so we're looking really from above the cockpit right now, so not really driver's eye view, but what we get here is the sense of how much of the track that these drivers use, and it's something that yesterday in the World Championship at the Nordschleife we were noticing, comparing our All-Stars with the World Championship drivers, is just how much more of the curves that they're using, all those accoutrements that are added to a racetrack that just allow the race car drivers, Ewan, to get the most that they can.
Yeah, they are quite phenomenal in terms of getting close to the grass and the gravel on the sides of the road, using all of the road, as you say. It is quite remarkable. But then again, there are some bits of the racetrack you don't want to use and whatever. You can't use it all wall to wall all the time, because that's not the fastest way around. It is remarkable how they find their fastest way around, though.
Not everyone is a Ross Chastain, is I guess what you're trying to say.
Well, that's a different story.
That is a different story. That
will never happen again.
No, because didn't they add rules about not having that now? They didn't add it after it happened last season, which was interesting. They waited until after the season was done to add it.
Yeah, well, just to have the championship decided at that final corner at Phoenix with someone going into the crowd trying to win a championship.
That certainly would have been something. Here's your GT3s, by the way. Still Pinto from Haase and Tunes, who's in an Apex Racing Academy car. Just to remind you, it's not an Arnage competition machine. It does feel a little bit weird. It's taking some getting used to, but same vein, you've got Leandro Andretti in a Team PGZ car, who's someone we've seen on RaceSpot in German sim racing, Arnage colors most recently. And then behind, you've got a very curiously named BMW M SIM Cup privateer entry, because last I checked, Florian Labigre was part of R8G Esports, and he's entered into this machine along with Jesse Jones, who was also part of R8G Esports the last I checked.
Well, yeah, Labigre has only actually been at one round so far, 5th place at Sebring. Well, he's only scored points in one of the rounds so far, I should say. And so I'm not entirely sure what's gone on there, but could even be, I mean, it could be as simple as a mistake, if we're honest. I don't want to read too much into it before we've heard from them specifically, but that is a bit of an odd one.
It's the naming of the car that is very specific as well. It was designed not last year for the BMW Sim GT Cup, not for the BMW Sim 110T. It was specifically for the BMW M SIM Cup. So we'll see if we can dig up some information on that. Riding over the shoulder of Luca Kita, who is coming off a fun race here at the Nordschleife yesterday. One thing that we usually talk about when we talk about the Nordschleife, and not necessarily so relevant when you talk about the Grand Prix layout here, Ewan, is that fact that there are Nordschleife specialists. There are drivers that have done thousands and thousands of laps at that track, and so when you go in competition to a track like that, you know that you're going to see the experts start to rise to the crop. Here at the GP layout, not necessarily the case, although Eduardo Leo is really making his case to try and get up to the front.
It's a very different situation to what we've seen yesterday, but it is, oh goodness, no less close. SRT Movano Corsa really punchy in these opening 5 minutes or so. And as I said earlier on, if I was Eduardo Leo, I'd really want to get through on Patrick Wolff right now to try and head into that bit of traffic first of anybody. And right now he's getting very close to doing so, but as they battle, they just drag the next few into this. And we've got around 9 within a second of each other for the lead right now.
The way that the race starts with both classes starting at the same time means that we're not that close on track. We're probably still a decent number of laps away from getting into the meat of traffic, and so give it maybe 5 or 10 more minutes before we see that. Dominic Hoffman's not just worried about behind and the BS Turner machine that has Valtteri Alander behind the wheel, but he wants to try and close that gap up so that if he has to see Movano and Apex Racing cars trip over each other, he's in a spot to try and take advantage, of course, after a amazing start to the season for Urano Esports. Jesse Jones chimes in on our RaceSpotTV YouTube chat. Not a mistake. That's ominous.
But doesn't explain why. That's not a mistake. So that's quite worrying. but anyway, hopefully they're doing all right. Anyway, it doesn't seem to have taken any pace off them.
No, yeah, I don't know. Team names don't tend to do too much when it comes to your pace, which is why some of these interestingly long team names, I'm going to question why we see them sometimes.
It's the whole thing around a team, though, rather than the actual name itself. Obviously, that doesn't really matter, but it's the whole thing around the team itself and whatever that might affect or help or hinder or whatever.
So are you telling me that SRC Movano Corsa GTP Rosa is not faster than SRC Movano Corsa GTP Arjuna?
Yeah, it's...
you see?
I get what you mean, yeah. And I don't know why they don't just go for SRC Movano Corsa, just generally. But I don't know why they need the Rosa in there.
It's so that when they're signing the teams up to the race, they know which team to sign up with. It can be quite confusing to make sure you've registered with the right team.
I've never experienced this, so it's not a problem.
We've got to get you off your laptop and into the iRacing sim. Meanwhile,
I've been in on my laptop, but no, it's yeah. I understand that it can be complicated. It just makes our life more complicated, which is why we complain.
Yes, but at the very least, have they made our life a little bit easier by having... There are some highlights on the side of the car. Now, there's no other SLC Movano cars in the field today, so we can't speak to the level of helpfulness that the highlights are giving us. What I will say is Joop de Ligt did send me some messages and some photos last night, and I have been a stern complainer about Urano Esports and how all their liveries are identical. We don't get them today, but next time we're racing for the BMW M SIM Cup, hopefully we'll get the highlights on the car to make it a bit easier.
That is good news, and differentiate them from race clutch on occasion as well, which has been a problem.
And red line.
Because and red line, all of the red and black teams have been a bit of a problem. But yeah, it's only been so apparent because Urano have been so good so far this season, taking all 3 wins in the LMDH category with the 2 different cars. Yves de Licht and Dylan Shrivens with one of them together last time out at Road America. So yeah, I guess that's why it's become so apparent to us. But they're right up there again with at least well, they've got 3 in the top 10 at the moment, or is that no? The third one's just outside the top 10, but 2 inside the top 6 at the moment.
As per usual, it does seem somewhat normal. It's going to be fun heading into the next special event because I was about to say Urano don't have an LMDH to run, but then they are your defending Digital Nürburgring Endurance Series champions. So we're going to the 24 hours of the Nürburgring where they surely are going to be somewhat in contention. Let's take a look at the first real replay. We haven't taken a look at what happened on the start, but this is most recently what's happened with Mark Culver and solo incident and lucky not to take out oncoming traffic.
Yeah, just spun back on the road like that in a semi-dangerous way. It didn't end in disaster, but just seemed to lose it, really. And that's a worrying sign for me, really. We're only 10 minutes into this race, and already that car looks very, very nervous on the rear end coming into a medium-speed corner. I would absolutely hate that as a driver because he's got quite a long way to go here.
And he's going to be the first bit of traffic, and we deal with it into the chicane, allows the top 2 to stretch their legs. Is it going to put Dominic Hoffman under fire from Olander, from Ladd, from Shrivens, all stacked up? That was Mark Calver, excuse me. I think I said Mark Culver in the Mag Performance SRT machine. And it's going to set off a chain reaction down into turn number 1 as we start to pick off the traffic.
Yeah, 10 minutes in is the traditional time, and that's where we're at right now in terms of picking off the traffic. It's going to be very, very important, and already you can see a bit of separation for Patrick Wolff and Eduardo Leo. Dominic Hoffman just had to slow up a little bit for that slower driver in towards the final chicane. That's created a little bit of a gap that already needs closing.
But it's going to give and it's going to take, hopefully in equal measure. That's what the race car driver will want to believe, so he doesn't get too aggressive. Leo still tracking in Wolff's tire tracks, and you can see how Dominic Hoffman is having to be very, very careful in how he picks his way through the traffic. He went to the outside of the ATRS car. In contrast, the BS Turner machine up and under. These are those split-second decisions that you can't decide what you want to do by learning in a classroom. You decide by being out there on track, and miscommunication there almost caused an insane checkup. Fortunately, we survived, but Dominic Hoffman now well and truly off of the back of your race leaders.
Just very nearly side by side for the race lead there between Wolff and Leo, as they had to just slow up through the Schumacher S. Well, Wolff did slightly more than the Movano car did, and now they're really in a battle. They're all moving around, some of these GTs anyway, moving around a little bit to try and get out of the way of the prototypes, which is not really advised, I've got to say, but it has been happening just a little bit. So far, though, it's been all right in terms of traffic.
That was quite aggressive from Valtteri Olander in the number 96 BS Turner machine as we ride on board with him. This is always the most interesting. I love just riding with these drivers and seeing how they deal with it, because certain drivers are able to make the most out of the situations, and Eduardo Leo's done a good job of trying to make the most of the situations while not being too aggressive. Chock-a-block down the hill into turn number 1, though. I do not want to be a part of this one. If I was a driver, I'd be much more happy to ride in the second hour of the race. And that's one of the things that you decide, though, as a team. Which driver does the start, which driver does the end?
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually, because this point in the race is very, very nervy. That was extremely brave from Patrick Wolff there. He was absolutely sure how long his BMW was, because if he had left that any longer, Leo would have been alongside him and he would have caused an accident by doing that. So fair play for that one. But at that point there, just behind the leaders in GT3 is right where the traffic is. These 2 leaders have got through right now, but the real midfield of the LMDH category just going through that right now as well.
Looking rearwards from your race leader, there go the Apex Racing and SRC Movano cars. Meanwhile, issue for the privateer entry. Florian Lebigra has been pushed wide, and that is a very weird line to be running, shortcutting the Schumacher S. We'll take a look at what happened in a few moments' time. First pass through traffic, always the most chaotic. For the most part, we've gotten through without too much drama. It has broken up the pack as expected, though. Not that much, all things considered, though, in the GT3s.
Yeah, not so much in the GT3s, but certainly in LMDH. And this, I think, goes back to what I was saying earlier on about this track not actually being that bad for traffic, meaning that you can stay a little bit closer in this one, especially LMDH. I remember after the first traffic at Road America, the field was all over the place.
Oh!
Oh dear, and speaking of, Urano off at the final chicane.
Sam Coitert and I think maybe Matti Siepel are getting tagged and involved here, back down through the field. Do you remember live race control? Not sure how busy they're really going to be, but I guess we will find out in a few moments' time. I want to show you, not a crash, but what traffic can do in terms of presenting passing opportunities now that we're into a bit of clean air once again. Just take a look at Pablo Espes in that Obsidian racing car. Yes, he takes the off-track and goes the long way around, but guess what? It gives him the opportunity to get past Urano, and while he wasn't able to hold on to 6th position, the give and takes of traffic giving to Obsidian there.
Yeah, they did, and that was a brave one because he did go off the road to do it, but then again, he was on the outside of the GT3 and maybe decided that he was going to get pushed off there anyway and whatever, so it's fine generally, I guess, and he's got away with it. As you say, didn't hold on to that place anyway. Obsidian back down to 7th now at this point, but yeah, it's not a bad pass, and as you say, shows what traffic can do in terms of presenting opportunities. Just shame it didn't quite go through for the race lead here.
See what happened to Florian Lebigre if we can. Now, in his M4 GT3, was there something into the hairpin already? Because he's pulled off to the left and is trying to get out of dodge. Yeah, I feel like something happens down here. Williams Esports, that's the contact with the white car, I do believe. That looked quite innocuous.
It did look very innocuous. I will be interested to see if there's any suspension damage there, or whether, it must be, because, and that's what happened to Coitert. Oh, and he did get just scraped by someone coming past. Let's have a second look and see, is it this? Oh no, it's just over the curb himself more than anything.
Oh, and that's Matti Siepel who tried to take avoiding action. I do think he got away with that though. Not sure if they actually made contact.
I think there was a bit. And Lebigre, by the way, is out the race by the looks of things for that privateer entry. But yeah, not so bad the first run through traffic here. Not bad at all.
And it hasn't separated out your race leaders in either class, by the way. So top and bottom, it's Apex Racing Academy, it's SRC Movano, and it's Team Redline and Grid and Go Esports. That's going to be a storyline to watch as well. Newcomers to the championship in terms of the team name. But Sven Haase, part of that team. Established, of course, in the sim racing world. Given that they've joined in round 4, we're not talking about making our way to BMW Sim Live anymore. We're only focused on building up championship points. I don't think we're going to be talking about Grid and Go Esports maybe fighting at the very front, but with GT3 being so mix and mash so far, and Redline looking like they're the ones picking up momentum, could Grid and Go make a challenge to try and climb up, if not to the top 5, then maybe the top 2?
I don't think it's too late, certainly with 7 rounds remaining, and what's that, a possible nearly 200 points on the line. You know, the championship leaders at the moment in GT3 barely got 50, so it's very possible, but they will need a couple of race wins along the way, and the problem is going to come from the teams around them scoring points in a very similar manner, like Team Redline, for example, in front of them right now. They're currently leading the championship. Second place is a good result in isolation, but when you think about the championship leaders still extending even further of a championship lead against them, it's not particularly helpful, even if the result looks pretty good.
Look at this top 3, Ewan. Hoffman right on the back of Leo. Wolf there as well. You've got Alander, Ladd, Strivens. We said the traffic didn't really break them up. You said it's maybe a good place for traffic. I'm not sure I'm necessarily going to agree with that, but I will agree that we've worked our way through the first cycle quite nicely. Now, we're already halfway through the fuel run for these LMDH cars. Remember, these drivers will go about 40-ish minutes. The GT3s will go about an hour. Knowing that we have probably one more pass-through traffic before the pit stop cycle, what does that impact what these drivers are likely thinking about right now?
I don't know if it's going to heighten or decrease the aggression that we're going to see from these guys, especially up the front of the field. I'm not even sure it's going to be that much easier either, because as you say, this field's not very spread apart in LMDH or GT3 right now, so I'm not really sure if it changes very much at all at this point. but it's just keeping the aggression going. The point after the pit stops is really where we're going to see quite who's where at the moment, because I feel like everybody's so close right now. It's sort of everybody's to win and everybody's to lose all at once, and I'm not really writing anyone outside the top 10 sort of off just yet, because it has remained remarkably close for the 20 minutes.
All it takes, though, is one GT3 car, like it did for Dominic Hoffman, for the leaders to be slightly separated once again. Check in with the train for second place that is just within drafting range of 1 and 2 on the podium, but struggling to hold there. Jimmy Antunes has Leandro Andaruti in the Team PGZ car, Luca Kita in the Urano Esports HP car, and then Julian Kesselhut in the BS Competition 189, all still following him as they work on to that back straightaway. Interesting to see Antunes work his way over to the Apex Racing Academy, and it goes to show that that program is not just about youngsters, but there's about giving maybe young people opportunities to learn from a wily old veteran like Jimmy Antunes, who, even if he's not got as much of the World Championship experience in iRacing, has plenty of top-level sim racing experience.
Yeah, he's a very strong driver across the board, so I think it does kind of break down this myth a little bit that when you get past the age of about 23, you can't learn anything else, and you can't get any better anymore. We always, and we've spoken plenty about this in the last year or two, since lockdown, I guess, about these youngsters coming into sim racing, teenagers, doing really well, and those are the kind of drivers you expect to see in an academy. But actually, it's not only about them; it's about people who, as you say, like Jimmy Antunes, kind of breaking down the myth that you can't improve any longer, and making, I guess to some it would feel like going from Arnage to Apex Academy would feel like a downstep to some people, but I see it more as a sidestep, really, and a sidestep that could lead him to more steps upwards, if you see what I mean. And that's quite a roundabout way of saying it, but yeah, it's interesting to see, because, as you say, it's not so common that someone who's not young would be in that team, I suppose.
I wonder as well for Jimmy, I'm not sure how much behind the scenes he was helping with day-to-day management of Arnage as well. Maybe the fact that he's able to do less of that is good for him. Maybe we can get the chance to talk with him at the end if he finishes on the podium.
I was laughing out loud there because Paul Smith, the comments just said, I'm not calling people over 23 old, by the way.
No, see, this is the problem. Ewan, how old are you now?
20.
Yeah. You're still young. As you get older, you're going to have to realize that you've got to be very careful about how you talk about age.
I know. It's so strange to me, but yeah, I mean, it's not even an old thing. It's just a sort of point in life where you feel like you can't improve anymore.
But you're not 23. How would you know?
No, yeah, but I can observe 23-year-olds.
How do you know what 23-year-olds are thinking?
Well, I don't, but you don't think about improving. It just you do it. You don't think about it, or I guess you do both, or neither. You know what I mean? It's.
I feel quite insulted. I don't know. As someone that picked up commentary at the ripe old age of 27, Ewan.
Yeah, no. It's a different skill, first of all.
We're throwing you directly under the bus right now, both me and Paul.
But also, like, the age where you stop improving at stuff, and it's different for different stuff, but for stuff generally, it's different for everyone also. So, it's a very person-by-person basis.
Here's where I'll agree to disagree. I think that as you get older, you get less interested in learning about everything. But as you get older, you're also better at learning, and so you focus on the things that you want to do. I'll give you an example. We're in this age of AI, right? Everyone's like, oh, AI is coming for everything, right?
Yeah.
They've been saying that about as a software engineer. They've been saying that about my job for going on 50 or 60 years. You know what happens is that as technology changes, people have to learn and change with the technology. So
yeah,
I work with people who are, close to retirement, who have worked through COBOL, which I know you're not very technical, Ewan. That is maybe one of the most painful programming languages in the world. And then have, gone through 30, 40, 50 years of working, and now are using modern technology. It's like, well, it's fine, everyone can learn. I'm just trying to make sure that you see what I'm doing here, Ewan, is getting on the good side of Paul Smith.
Yeah, well, you have to. I don't commentate with him every 2 weeks, so it's fine. But no, it's anyway. We need a 6-hour podcast for me to really get into my thoughts on that. But
6
anyway,
hours?
Not 6 hours. But this race is definitely not long enough for me to fully explain myself.
So what we'll
I'll
do
leave
is
a half finish point there.
Next week, what we'll do is you and me, all 24 hours of the Nürburgring. We'll go. We'll do it.
That is the venue for that. Yes.
It really is, especially with 5 classes of competition. Into the traffic once more as we pick up your GT3 and LMDH classes once again, and Eduardo Leo's not waiting. 3 wide with ATRS Esports, and boy was that aggressive from SRC Movano, but Leo finally hits the front, and you were wondering how patient he was going to be. It wasn't the first pass through traffic, it was the second one that saw Eduardo Leo go for the lead.
Well, he was aggressive, but he was right, just the right amount of aggression there. Very, very high level, pretty high risk as well, and good cooperation from the ATRS car on the outside to let 2 of the prototypes down the inside. But Leo fully seizing his opportunity there because he hasn't had many in truth. He really hasn't had very many opportunities. Here's the onboard. He sees Wolf making the move, maybe thinking about it, and thinks the opportunity is there, and he absolutely takes it. That was fantastic.
That was about as beautifully executed as you can get. We often talk a lot about not leaving enough space, a little bit late, a little bit aggressive, but when you get 2 drivers that will put as egos aside and just leave racing room, you get moves like that. But Leo's aggression almost costs him. Arnage Competition with a great little save there as they work their way onto the back straightaway. I don't think that was Nicolas Rubelar, so it would have been Thibaut Prévost, who's got Ollie Steinbraten right behind him. Boy, was that close.
Really big save from him as well, as it's side by side for second. Urano going through on Patrick Wolf, who's having a bit of a disaster of a lap now. Valtteri Landers down the inside, Josh Ladd I think that is as well. It is indeed for Williams, so it's an absolute disaster for Patrick Wolf, and he's going to get stuck. Oh dear, very nearly got stuck behind that GT3.
Remember, live race control, one wonders what Leo's going to get for that contact with Prévost. Now 3 wide again, and Paddy Wolf I don't think wants to be too calm too much longer. Contact made with Urano as Hoffman tries to lean on the Apex Racing Academy car, going to take the long way around and try and sneak on through. Cuts back because there's an Apex Racing Team car to deal with. This is what traffic will do, and now the outside becomes the inside. Can Wolf get the hybrid and spool himself into the middle sector?
Now, this is what the first run-through traffic promised but never really delivered. The second run-through has been fantastic so far, but not so much for Patrick Wolf. He has now been overtaken by Hoffman. Valtteri Lander down the inside for BS Turner. He's going to trap the car behind Arnage, is he? Not quite. He tried it, I think, but couldn't quite manage it. Down towards the hairpin, he'll have to settle for 4th place, or it's not over yet.
Oh, he went aggressive, the corner with a million lines, and Alander able to squeak on through. Is there damage on Paddy Wolf's car? It's not normal to see him bleed like this in traffic. Alander aggressive, and a couple of cars almost going off into the gravel. You said that we were wondering if this was going to happen the first time through. I wonder if the calmness the first time only built it up a little bit more the second time. Wolf now down to 5th spot as Josh Ladd in the Williams Esports car grabs 4th.
It's not a bad theory at all, really. Everybody realising that maybe we can be a bit more aggressive than we were first run through here. And that's exactly what they have done. Oh my word, Patrick Wolf, that was very, very late on the brakes. Everybody got stacked up behind Sven Haase down into the final chicane. But it has been a complete disaster for Apex Racing Academy on this second run through traffic. As you say, not sure about damage, can't see any, but it's very strange and a surprise to see him lose so many places in so few laps.
And so now, not just gaps at the front of the LMDH field where it's 3.3 seconds between first and second, also now a bit of a gap building between Redline and Grid and Go in GT3 because of all the fighting that Sven Haase had to avoid through the final corner. As Diogo Pinto still leading in the GT3 class, but Haase still relatively close, all things considered, as we're 10 minutes or so away from the next pit stop cycle of the race. The first one, we don't traditionally see driver changes in this first cycle, Ewan, because the way that it worked for the LMDH is there's 3 stints. One driver's going to do 2, one driver's going to do 1. We do tend to see them do the driver change in that final pit stop of the race.
That tends to be the case, but you never know if we're going to see something different, because we certainly did last year around this circuit, but obviously it's a very different situation. So we will see, but only 10 minutes away now from those first pit stops, and I do actually think that we will maybe get one more pass-through traffic before we have to stop here, at least the back half of the GT3 field anyway.
All white Williams Esports livery, by the way. I said that Urano were going to give us the favour of giving some highlights on their car next time. Can Williams get there? I do like the Williams Esports livery, that's why.
Well, that is true. It is a nice livery and a very recognisable livery in sim racing, but the fact that this livery is so just not intricate is making it identifiable, if you see what I mean.
Fair enough.
The fact that there are no highlights means that I can spot it from a mile off.
I was going to say, we haven't checked in much with the battling back in the LMDH field, and that's kind of for a reason, because there's some cars battling here, and they've got the same livery on, and it's the wonderful BMW factory livery that we see running in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, but apparently it's SIMSA in front of RD Sim Sports, apparently.
Yeah, and don't forget there's multiple RD SimSport cars as well in this one, so that makes things even more difficult as Jonas Vollmeyer comes into the pit lane here after half an hour only.
Something's wrong for that one, because he's not going to be able to get to the end from this point, I'm pretty sure. I would suspect there might be a little bit of contact, some damage through traffic.
He'll need 2 more stops, you mean? Nobody's getting to the end.
Yes.
But yes, you're probably right. I mean, stretching it 45 minutes is only 5 minutes longer, I suppose. 2 or 3 laps longer than you would normal, but I suppose that is quite a lot to save over the length of stint that you have in these cars.
See if we can take a look and find some moment of drama for Jonas Vollmeyer. Here's into the chicane at the end. Oh.
There's no contact.
You say there's no contact, but it keeps going, doesn't it? We'll need to look from up above, but I don't believe everything is fine from first viewing.
Well, very late on the brakes. I think he locks it up just himself there.
And Redline and Arnage make contact all of their own. I agree there may not actually have been actual contact, but was there a bit of netcode? That's maybe the more imperative question.
It doesn't say that the cars don't, are not jolting around like they've been in contact, so I don't really know. As the other Urano car, or one of the others, Dylan Shrivens gets down the inside towards turn 1, and Patrick Wolf continues to slide further back.
I wonder if he's got the battery in a bad situation and he's just bleeding time right now, because it's just not moving. It looks fine through the corners, but it's just not going fast. You know what I mean? It's just not spooling up like you'd expect. And Shrivens pass, surely Pablo Espez, the Obsidian car, will be next to follow. Paddy Wolf's now, what, a full 9 seconds off of your race leader?
Yeah, that's weird, because cars I drive always seem to do that as well. But no, I'm
You don't
joking,
drive hybrid cars, though, so you don't have that excuse.
I am joking. Yeah, it's very weird at the moment. And as you say, your damage theory is not a bad one, but I just can't see where he'd really have picked that up from, as opposed to anyone else, because if you think about it, he's not the only one who's been involved in really aggressive and close quarters racing, which is the only thing I've really seen from them so far, and he's the only one who's struggling right now. So I'm very puzzled as to what's happened here, but he's lost about 10 seconds over the course of the last 10 minutes.
So, on board with the confusingly named ART Sim Racing X car. It is not an Apex Racing Team car. Does make me wonder what ART stands for, though. Timo Roorda is going to take the opportunity of Danny Chivichabo trying to look one way then the other, realizes that he's not going to get it done, and then makes that mistake that we saw earlier with Urano in that crazy fight earlier, where if you take too much of the curb through the final chicane in these LMDH cars, Ewan, they are so stiffly sprung that sometimes you'll take a bump that you don't want to.
And we saw it with Sam Coulter earlier as well in the GT3, so it's not only the LMDHs that have to worry about it. I don't really get the point of trying to do that anyway, because the run towards the final corner is a very short one, so you need a very, very good run to be able to do it. But anyway, I would just follow behind at that point. But it was a good opportunity to head down the outside into the chicane, but just couldn't quite pull it off on that occasion. So that battle will stay as it is, but it's continuing to be really bad viewing for Apex Racing Academy back there.
Talking of the main Apex Racing team, by the way, it's plus 10, I think, for... plus 11 now, excuse me, for Luke McEwen. He's behind Michael Yanni, who's only plus 1, but these drivers find themselves about 10 seconds off of your leader. You can see in front of them the massive train that's still building for third, as there is a swap around. McEwen's going to jump in front of Yanni, and surely team orders on display there. But that 99 car is one that has shown its potential this season without getting necessarily the result that it deserves. McEwen, in my mind, not totally out of podium contention, but I would put him a bit too far out of the contention for the win right now.
Yeah, the two leaders are too far gone probably at this stage to get there, but a podium would still be a fantastic result for McEwen, and he is the only Apex Racing Academy driver inside the top 5 in the standings. He's left behind some of his teammates. He drove with Michael Gianni in the first round, and then he drove with Kevin Ellis Jr., and then in the next round drove with Elvis Rankin, so he has not shared... maybe he's just really hard to work with. I'm sure he's not. That's a joke.
You're going to get in trouble.
That's a joke. But no, it's put him in a good way in the championship, to be fair, because it doesn't mean he's fighting over it with any of his teammates, which might actually be a good thing.
Yes, to be clear, Ewan was making a joke. We do love ourselves, the Apex Racing team. Check out a replay. I think what we're about to see here is Valtteri Alander cut a bit of the chicane. It's definitely in the second part, because slowdown penalty, he pulls down to the side of the track and allows the Williams Esports Marla car to grab the third step on the podium away from him. Look from up above and you'll just see how narrow and tight the margins are and just how much they're pushing. It's keeping 4 tires inside of the white line, and it's pretty clear there from up above. Valtteri failed to do that.
He did, but the noticeable thing for me there was that Josh Ladd didn't actually do a lot better in terms of staying up. He was not too much further to the left, if you see what I mean. He was within the white lines, and Alander wasn't, and obviously that was clear to see. But Josh Ladd didn't do exactly a lot different there to Alander, which just, as you say, it shows the fine margins that you have. Although I do feel sometimes I'm not a fan of those sausage curves down at any chicane. I'll make that clear. But I don't really see the point of having a slowdown there if there are sausage curves, but anyway, pit stops already, quite early.
Yeah, this is earlier than I expected. 35 minutes in, Movano and Williams. So maybe this explains why the other Urano car came in a bit earlier. Jonas Wolmar stationary for about 20-ish seconds. Let's see for Eduardo Leo, who hits his box, goes up on the jacks, because remember, you can take fuel while changing tires with these LMDH cars and the GT3 cars to match the regulations in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. If it's 20 seconds, it's not a full pit stop. It's only 14.7 for SRC Movano, so 2 tires going on there, not a full tank of fuel, slightly compromising, and in stark contrast for Josh Ladd, it's going to be 22.8 seconds, so almost 10 seconds longer.
And where is Vollmeyer? Quite some way behind, because that was 20 seconds for him. They started quite a long way further down as well. But very interesting now. Maybe it will be a 3-stop race for some of these LMDHs, and maybe it will be 2 stops for some of the others. If I was in that camp, though, and what I'm suggesting maybe Movano did, is they changed tyres there, as it looked like they did, and maybe they waited for the tyres to be done and then just stopped fueling at that point and just went. So, you kind of get the tyre change, but you don't really need much more fuel, so just go. I don't know, of course, and I don't even know if 15 seconds is quite long enough to change all 4 tyres, but they certainly did do a shorter than full stop.
Did you notice how it quickly got dark, and now it's quickly not so dark again? It's not really,
clouds.
It's not really doing much in terms of track temperature, but those are the swings and roundabouts that maybe a 1-lap overcut would benefit you from. There is going to be a couple of drivers that will go even further in this LMDH class, and so as Dylan Shrivens takes over the lead, Hoffman, Alander, Espes, Shivi Sharbo all roll their way down onto the lane. I wonder if Paddy Wolf's drop-off in pace was him trying to hit a fuel number, because he has also gone 1 additional lap onto lap 23 of the run.
Yeah, that's interesting. And something I've noted as well, actually, is some differences in strategy from the same team. So, to explain what that means, Urano have gone for Volmar with a very early stop. Hoffman's taken quite an early stop, but Scrivens has been able to go a little bit further than the rest. Apex Racing Academy has split their cars. Williams Esports have split their cars. These teams with more than one car up there in the fray can certainly sort of feel around with the strategies, put one egg in each basket and see which one works out, basically.
I do wonder how much of them are... how much of the strategy is left to the drivers and how much is dictated by a strategist slash team manager per car. That's always one of those interesting things. The bigger the team, the more of a structure they tend to have around those sort of decisions.
I mean, do you think, though, that even if there is no strategist for them and it is just up to the drivers, do you think those two teams of drivers have no communication with each other? Surely they must chat to each other.
But then there'll also be the backroom conversations between the drivers in the car outside of the bigger team situation saying, so what do you think? What should we do? Everyone, we're all racing drivers. We want to win at the end of at least I hope we all want to win for the most part. Even longer for Dylan Shrivens. So he goes on to lap 24. I think we are seeing... Nope, Paddy Wolf stays out there as well. There's Kenneth Gulbranson in the Williams Esports Chill Blast car. He will duck down to pit lane. So we are seeing a bit of a wide open strategy book, which we love, because let's not forget that some of the best races in the BMW Sim GT Cup in 2021 and 2022, to be fair, came from those races where we had the split call between 0, 2, and 4 tires in the one and only pit stop that we had. Strategy is always fun.
Yeah, it's why I'm not a fan of the rule of changing fuel and tyres at the same time, but I say that on almost every broadcast, so I won't repeat that, but I just did. But yeah, it was my favourite race anyway from 2022. It was the Nürburgring round. It really came down towards the very final moment. I say all that, I can't remember who won. but yeah, it was. I remember it being very exciting to the very end. And by the way, I'm getting quite a lot of abuse for saying
yes,
the age thing earlier on. I didn't say 23 was old, by the way.
You did.
But no, I didn't say that. Oh, that's not what I meant. But anyway, I'll leave that now.
Okay, so
I've made my bed.
Should we go to one of your other controversial takes?
Not about Sebring.
Okay, no. Because we have already been over to Sebring this season in what was a fun round number 2. But you did once suggest here on RaceSpotTV, and we can go back and get the audio, Ewan, so you can't deny it anymore. But you have said that repaving, at the very least, parts of Sebring would be a good idea.
No, I definitely didn't say that.
You
did
say that parts of Sebring could be repaved. Don't deny it, because we will go get the tapes.
Okay, well, you can do if you want. That's fine. But the thing I remember saying was that it'd be a fun experiment, to be honest, because I just want to see what would happen.
That is true.
More than anything.
You'd ruin it without a shadow of a doubt, but...
Well, this is the problem. You can't go back once you've done it, so it's a bit of a problem.
Sebring's great, let's be real. Sebring is great, but if you take away the bumps, it is just another flat racetrack. So no, do not.
Which tend to be not as good. Really.
Exactly. Well, even look at NASCAR and some of the ovals, right? Atlanta Motor Speedway, they took what was... I know that's ended up being a somewhat successful project, but that was a track that the racing was so good at because the surface had deteriorated so long, and so they were then avoiding resurfacing it because they knew it would take some time for it to degrade again and to produce the same level of racing. It's a slightly different situation from the Circuit of the Americas, where the MotoGP riders are quite right to ask for safe riding conditions.
Well, yeah, I want to ask you though, on what metric Atlanta's rejigging has been successful? Well, because I've got to say I don't enjoy it.
I'm not a NASCAR fan, but it feels like some people enjoy it. So by some metric, I think you can say it was some sort of success.
No, I hated it, actually.
I agree. I agree. We need skill as much as possible. I'll show you something that maybe did not require a lot of skill. Ole Steinbraten on the outside, getting a helping hand into the gravel, and now just keep your eye out here.
Careful.
Is this going to end badly? Is that your race leader?
It is. Well, previous race leader anyway. Yeah, it was the Ravano car, and they've got damage.
And that's not small damage either. So, again, helpless for Steinbratton. You're a passenger once you're on the gravel.
Oh, he's got damage. I can see Movano already. So you can see the office car just in behind. That prototype behind was the office car. You can see them on the left-hand side leaderboard already 2 seconds in front of Movano now. And they're in the pit lane.
Oh, it just stacked up. Steinbratton took a tow back to pit lane, but Eduardo Leo, who, let's be honest, early contender for move of the season already. Not much he could really do in that one.
Yeah. It's really unfortunate. Oh dear, that's the Genesis car, isn't it?
Yeah. It's getting a little bit awkward right now. That's Daniel Towell in the 069. Not as nice as the 69 machine, but back out onto track.
I wonder what. I wonder when these leaders are going to come in now. Because, oh dearie me, we've got another car round down at the Mercedes Arena. It's like Arnage involved again.
It was with the virtual driver's LMDH machine. Yeah, I'm not. It's like there's oil being slipped on the racetrack or something. After what was a very chaotic second pass through traffic, was that BS Turner that just got into the back of the LMDH?
Not sure. Williams were involved as well. It was all. There was all a lot going on here. So we're on board with the lander in towards the 3-wide. Ah, yeah. That was pretty careless, really.
I mean, race control is going to take a look at all of this, and it's. I mean, that's pretty slam dunk.
Yes, I don't think they'll be spending too long of a time looking at that, unfortunately, because that was just a bit careless from a lander.
Do remember, if you want to follow along with the live race control, head on over to RaceSpot.tv/BMW is the link that I am being told. You can keep an eye on what our stewards are saying. They always have the hardest job in the world, and so I'm very glad I'm not in their shoes, and I get to just say something is a slam dunk penalty, even if it is not. In your mind, Ewan, as we head into now potentially a GT3 pit stop cycle, probably only 15 minutes away. Can anyone catch Diogo Pinto, who's now 5 full seconds clear of Sven Haase?
It looks like a very tall order now, even with this amount of time remaining. Of course, it's going to be a different set of drivers on the other side of these pit stops, which could change things, and it depends on how much fuel people are putting in and whether Pinto can make it on fuel. But yeah, if it's a pure flat-out race to the end, it's hard to see this red line car being caught.
Still got the battle for the third step on the podium. That has slightly changed with Urano's 190 sliding up in front of Anderutti's PGZ 114. But field is starting to lose its lose a couple of cars here and there. Already 4 GT3 cars have retired. Of course, Redline and Arnage, the most recent of them. But the Ahmed School of Motoring powered by Kellogg's and the BMW M SIM Cup Privateer are 2 previous retirees through the course of this race so far. And while Pinto's relatively calm at the front, Shrivens has just headed down onto pit lane on the end of lap 27. We were wondering when he was going to come in. Even more interestingly, Paddy Wolf is still out there and going.
Yeah, this is really bizarre now, because it's also posing the question to me, why were some of the drivers in after only 35 minutes? What was going on with them? Especially Jonas Willmeyer, who was barely made half an hour. I think made 25 minutes or something. So it's a very, very bizarre situation in LMDH right now. And really, I would really struggle to tell you who's even in the net race lead right now.
So I've just sent a message over to Mark Tranter at the Apex Racing team with the... This was the 3 messages I sent him. My brain, this strategy, help. So hopefully someone smarter than me will be able to give us some information. Now, the fact that we saw Shrivens go so long, to me, indicated they were going to do the driver change. And yes, Joop de Ligt takes over in the number 92. Now, they've come out in 7th position, which is where they qualified. They are 45 seconds off of Paddy Wolf in the quote-unquote race lead. They are 14 seconds off of Dominic Kaufmann, who is the first car to have pitted. Like you said, I have no idea who's actually leading this race and what the picture looks like. This is one of those races where we're going to have to roll with the punches. And so let's roll back on over to that battle for third, because Luca Kita passed Jimmy Antunes.
Yeah, it's a lot more understandable in GT3. I know a bit more about what's going on here. Luca Kita has finally battled his way through on Jimmy Antunes. I did worry a little bit, actually, that Antunes was going to start to slip aside a little bit. Once one of them got through, he'd start to see everybody going through. But he has actually been able to only let Kita through, which is easier said than done, really, because you've got PGZ, BS Competition and Arnage all lined up there. And I think it wouldn't have been too difficult for them all to go through at once. But in fact, he did a good job of making sure it was only Kita that went through.
Urano Esports, I did mention earlier your Digital Nürburgring Landstracken Series champions for 2022-2023. That was Alexei Nesov and Seb Schmalenbach, the duo that came out on top in the championship. Not in a BMW, it must be said, so they lose points for that. Finally, we do see the pit stops underway. Paddy Wolf out. Owen Carroll's going to jump into the Apex Racing 198. I'm going to be very curious to see where they're going to feed out in comparison. And as Owen Carroll drops and rolls after what was a 31.7, so a full service pit stop, he's only 2.5 seconds off the back of Joop de Ligt. So, race leader is 17 seconds up the road with 70 minutes to go. It's going to be a very short stop for Owen Carroll in our final sequence of the race, who is guaranteed to just need one more pit stop, while I still have questions as to the strategy of Dominic Hoffman in Urano Esports. Well,
I've got quite a lot of questions about strategy all over the place, really, because it does seem very, very bizarre to me right now, but I think pit stop times are going to be something to just note here as well. Joop de Ligt, 31 seconds, Owen Carroll as well, so that's a good 10 seconds longer than those who pitted earlier, which suggests to me that the guys who pitted earlier have got no intention at all of going on this race on 2 stops. Absolutely no intention at all. But they're going to do 3, whereas the guys who stayed out longer are going to go for 2. So that's the only thing that you can really learn. But it's difficult to work out which one will be ideal at the moment because we are so far from the finish. But the fact that Movano car is now out of the equation means that the best running 3-stopping car is now about 10 seconds behind where it was previously, because it is now Hoffman rather than Leo.
You can see those pit stop times on the left side of the screen. Shortest 17.6 for Shivy Szabo, longest 31.7 for Carroll. Maybe not surprising, Jonas Warmeyer. Battling with the race clutch car that you mentioned earlier. Has a little bit of an issue there in the chicane. I think that's Diogo Pinto, the race leader behind them, who's not going to mind that he gave up probably half a second there because he leads by 6 seconds now.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, Vormar's having a bit of a nightmare so far. Didn't he qualify quite far down in this one? For whatever reason, wasn't quite on it in qualifying, and is suffering through that a little bit now in the race. For a driver who's not been outside the top 3 so far, alongside with Vlad Kimachev, that's a bit of a surprise. But there we are. His teammates are just behind him, I guess, in the standings, so it won't matter too much. And it's only 1 round, so exactly. He won't be. Yeah, he's fine.
I think that's the thing. It's only 1 round. Top 10 score points, so not everyone is scoring points every round. We saw this last year, where it was about getting into the top 12 to score a ticket to BMW Sim Live. As long as you were there most of the time, it was all right. Kevin Ellis Jr. punched his ticket by winning 3 in a row at the end of the year. Owen Carroll now has a full tank of fuel and probably a pretty heavy car, and so he's lost out a spot to Obsidian Racing, likely to lose out to the ART Sim Racing X car that goes around the outside on that run into the back straightaway. Compromise time for the both of them, and not ideal for Carroll, who's already now dropped a good 7 seconds off the back of Joop de Ligt, who's on a very similar strategy, of course. Have to see how it all plays out. I was told by one strategist, I won't call them out by name, it's complicated, I'm not sure.
Well, that's always helpful when you're in the race and you don't know yourself. I mean, it's not something we've really seen so far. As you said earlier on, we kind of just presumed that it would be an easy 2-stop for everybody in LMDH. That's what they would do, and it's all fine. But clearly, we've overlooked it massively. And it's going to be LMDH where the real headache is, rather than GT3, where I thought that fuel saving was going to be the real talking point. It looks like it's the opposite way around.
Yeah, I don't know if it's tyre related, because the temperatures, I mean, 18 degrees air temperature. That is the coldest you can get on iRacing. 32 degrees track temperature is pretty pretty cool, given that we've seen track temperatures in the past that go as high as 60, 70 degrees Celsius. So we've got a pretty wide range, all things considered.
And I'll just say, as well, by the way, that in the same way that 23 is not old, 18 degrees is not cold either.
Within the context of iRacing, it is.
Yeah, but air temperature-wise, because
yes, no.
I think it's the hottest day of the year so far, possibly where I am right now, and it is 18 degrees.
No, very valid point, but 18 is the coldest it
Yes.
can literally get on iRacing. So, yes, I agree. I live on the west coast of the US for a reason, because I enjoy temperatures that are greater than 0 for a reason. I totally lost my train of thought there, but that was a very, very good point. When we come to this GT3 cycle and pit stop, you said you don't like it when we do tires and fuel at the same time. The thing that it guarantees, though, Ewan, in this GT3 class, is everyone's going to take tires. There's not going to be any sort of change across the board.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I don't like about it, though. So, yeah, it does make it easy, and we know what's going to happen here. But yeah, it's going to be 4 tires across the board. The thankful thing is, actually, throughout these races so far, is that fuel has been a bit of a talking point so far, and it especially was last time out at Road America, where there were some people really struggling to get to the line, in fact, at the very end of that race, after having to do one more lap than they expected or whatever. So
yes.
It could be. You don't remember that? Well, I guess it's fresh in my mind because I watched it the other day. But yes, it was a worry, and I'm wondering whether it will be the same here. Although, based on how far the LMDHs went earlier, at their nearly 50 minutes at most, I'm expecting it maybe not to be so much of a problem here.
The only reason I've forgotten about the drama at Road America is because, again, I've been doing daily broadcasts since then, basically, so there's been a lot of action in between them. Poor Apex Racing Team were the ones that miscalculated, so I'm not 100% sure about that one. See what we'll say. What I do want to say is, if Dylan Shrivens is watching, ts.RaceSpotTV, we're here for a chat if you want to try and educate us a little bit more on the strategy games. It would be good to know what's going on. Check back in with Diogo Pinto, because amazed at the speed that he seems to have. And you want to know the funny thing right now here, Ewan?
What is it?
Because you're not in the sim, so you don't know this. Who do you expect is the second driver for this car?
Oh, I wouldn't have a clue, to be honest.
It's a certain Chris Lallem, so that's fine. You know who is currently spotting in sim for them right now? It's just this certain Oracle Red Bull Racing driver that's got a certain Grand Prix to deal with later today.
What is he doing here?
I can confirm that Jos Verstappen, who is Max Verstappen's alternate account on iRacing, is currently connected to the session and watching his red line teammate. Later today, Max Verstappen goes out in Miami to try and win yet another Grand Prix. What better way to kick off the day, though? It's probably, 10:30 in the morning over in Miami?
Yeah. It's 10:30 in the morning. The race would have started about 9:30, which is not unreasonable to be waking up for, because you've got a race to prepare for as well. But I'm very surprised that he's here, to be honest, watching.
Yeah, that is great. I love that Max is so committed to his teammates. There's a story that I do like to tell about Max as well, which is that if you think that you need all the fancy hardware to go racing, just know that Max Verstappen is someone that, there was the story about Max has a sim rig installed in his plane, which is absolutely false. Oh, as that's PGZ, that gets a rude talking to by one of your LMDHs, and now opens the door for BS Competition and Julian Kessel to try and get on through, and Anderutti all sorts of sideways.
Oh,
Kesselhut's going to go around, no fault of his own, chain reaction, but the BS Competition car pointed in the wrong direction.
And make sure you get back going again without causing any more problems, and he does exactly that. A real shame, though, as you say, just a bit of an accordion effect, really, and in the end, just got into the back of the PGZ car, went around by himself. I don't think we can blame this car really at all for that one. It all started down at turn 1, though, with the Genesis prototype slamming into this car.
I don't necessarily think that was intended. It's just the way that brakes in the LMDH can be very difficult to get to grips with. And then you can see here they'd actually had some contact initially. Anderutti tries to slide up, and then in the act of blocking, Kessel goes around.
All very awkward for everyone there, but just unfortunate for Kessel more than anything.
What's happened to Sven Haase though? Sorry, Ewan.
Yeah, you're right. Something's gone wrong.
This is one of those races where we're trying to keep track of everything, but is Sven Haase now also thinking about fuel mileage? Is that why he dropped so far off the back of Diogo Pinto?
I'm not entirely sure what's going on with Sven Haase really, because he did stick with Pinto for quite some time, even when the rest of the field couldn't, but finally that pace has become too much for him clearly, and the gap's now nearly out to 10 seconds and Haase is down to third place, so I do wonder whether he went out maybe a bit too hard at the start of this stint here and he's paying for it now in the final minutes.
So 90 seconds or so away from the top of the hour and still waiting for GT3 pit stops to get underway. Matti Siepola will head on in the hard mode car though, so the 995 BMW M4 GT3 trundles down pit lane for the first time today. And see who follows in. Sam Koiter in the Urano hiking media car. But not too many takers outside of that. Check back in with the likes of Joop de Ligt, because still curious how his strategy is going to work, because here we do have that number 92 machine. He's still 14 seconds off of his teammate in the race lead, which I think is a net win, and I mentioned it with Owen Carroll. He's got a heavy car right now. He's having to compromise compared to the lighter cars around him. Joop de Ligt's doing a great job to hold the gap to a lighter car and his teammate at the front of the field.
He is doing a good job right now, and I do wonder whether that means the two-stop strategy is coming into the ascendancy a little bit, but I wonder as well whether after this car comes in next time around, is it going to start closing in on the lead and whatever, because I think the gap was only about 15 seconds the other way around when Joop de Ligt was still, well, it wasn't him, it was Scrivens out there still, but when everybody else was chasing down, I think it was about 15-20 seconds on that occasion, just the other way around. So it's going to be very interesting, and one of those where you kind of have to wait for the final 20 minutes, half an hour or so, because we're not really going to get too many answers till then.
Past the top of the hour, and that's Pinto, by the way, that is on another planet, I think is what's going on right now. It was similar last time out when we raced in round number 3 over at Road America. Just the way that Pinto and Redline pulled away, it's very, very reminiscent of what we saw last time out. Expect 38-second pit stops for the GT3s, by the way. That's what we've seen out of both hard mode as Lasse Urainen takes over from Matti Siepola and Sam Koiter hands over the Urano 191 to Alexander Thieber. Still waiting though for the rest of the cars to come on in. Every lap they can go past the top of the hour is a little bit less fuel they have to put into the car. And given that a tire change is probably only about 35-ish seconds, I would actually think you can shorten your pit stop. You're not limited by the amount of time it takes to change the tires. I think you're still limited by the amount of fuel you're putting in the car.
Yeah, I think that is the case. It doesn't save you anything, so you might as well take 4. But also, that has generally been the accepted thing nowadays to just do anyway. So would be a big surprise to not see all 4 tyres changed. But that's only the second real full stop made so far. The other Urano car has, and that's hard mode car as well. So that's about it. Some of those down the back of the GT3s now doing it, but they've clearly made it past the hour. It's nowhere near as tight on fuel as it was at Road America. Oh, goodness. And
Nicholas Rubelar gets escorted off into the gravel. This is where I remind everyone that GTP, as the class is dubbed in IMSA, stands for going to pass. GTD, as GT3s are dubbed in IMSA, stands for going to die. There's your example.
And he even got slowed down for that by the looks of it.
He did. So painful, and he's a full 2.5 seconds now off the back of the PGZ car up the road in front of him. See if anyone comes in at the end of lap 32 for the GT3s. Nope, they'll extend one more lap longer. The interesting exception of Sven Haase, who after doing all of the quote-unquote fuel saving that slowed him down, is the first car inside the top 10 to dive down.
I'm not sure it was fuel saving. I think his tyres might have been dying a little bit towards the end of that stint there, and I'm not sure he's running out of fuel now, but maybe deciding that I've made it to the hour, it's safe for me to come in right now and get off these tyres because they're not serving me greatly. He'll come into the pit lane, change over driver, of course, and we'll see who gets in. It will be Rico Wenzel, by the looks of things, to get into the 001 and see whether they can, any of them at least, can get anywhere near Diego Pinto.
And somewhere in that pile of cars is a BS competition big red machine, and Norby Kish, real world truck racing driver, star, probably the appropriate word to use, who is a full-fledged member of the esports crew, will jump on in and take over the reins. Oh. That was an engine that went boom. You heard that as well, didn't you, Ewan?
Yeah, it was quite... it caught me off guard, if I'm honest, because you don't often hear that, especially down on pit lane.
Probably was Team Redline's Ollie Steinbraten, because he's been stationary in pit lane for quite a while. Would not be shocked if that was his engine finally giving up the ghost. Still Diogo Pinto out there and circulating, 10 seconds clear of those behind. Rico Wenzel, by the way, has come out in clean air, so it will be interesting to see how he's able to get up to speed and put a bit of a challenge on Luca Kita in terms of now this pit stop window. I'll go back and tell the story that I was trying to tell before chaos started to go again. Max Verstappen does not have a sim rig installed in his plane because Max Verstappen doesn't need a wheel and pedals to be faster than you. Just give him a controller and he'll be the quickest on iRacing.
That is really quite remarkable because you really don't see very many people on iRacing with a controller at all. And to be able to do that is quite remarkable. As speaking of Verstappen and his team, Team Redline into the pit lane, Pinto with a comfortable gap to the rest, and that indeed was Steinbraten by the looks of that, to be losing an engine. Or the Movano car, to be fair, because they're inside each other.
Oh, it could have been, yes.
But we wouldn't know even if we could see. Even now we can see.
I guess we have to decide what engine it sounded like going boom. Does iRacing have that level of audio modeling? I don't even know. So. Luke McEwen is going to be at the very front of pit lane in terms of stall because of the way that his qualified position benefits him in terms of box position. He's going to swap himself out though, and the young Elvis Rankin will take over. Lull him in for Pinto. Johan Royer is going to take over in that number 97 Apex Racing Academy car. Jorge Garcia in the 114. Alexei Nesov replacing Luca Kita in that Urano 190. And yes, we know that Chris Lollam is going to be clear by a country mile. Where's the grid and go car? Exiting the final corner. Nesov off of the limiter. It is going to be Urano holding on to second. Where's Johan Royer in comparison to Rico Wenzel, though? They're going to be side by side as they work down in towards turn number one. Tires up to temperature for the grid and go car. He'll have the opportunity to try and spring a surprise.
Yeah, it's not even really that close there for Wenzel. Thought he would be in front of, or at least around Nesov there, but absolutely not even on the podium anymore. And now really has a lot of work to do in the grid and go car. He's got one of the Uranos down his inside at the moment. I do wonder in that fact whether, because they come in earlier, they've had to put a little bit more fuel in than the rest, because with every lap you go longer before pitting, you have to put one less in to make it to the end. And maybe that early stop has just given them that second extra in pit lane that has put Apex Racing Academy in front of them.
And so while it's settled in now for the GT3s into the second portion of the race, check out some of your gaps. Our large competition Apex Racing team in hard mode, 6th, 7th and 8th with Elvis Rankin. Remember, taking the reins over from the charging Luke McEwen, who has given the 99 a fighting chance. 14 positions gained in that first stint by Luke McEwen.
Yeah, it's relatively all change here in this GT3 order. And by the way, Elvis Rankin sharing with Luke McEwen, so the first time McEwen has retained a driver combination for more than one round in a row, by the way. So.
I will say that for the Apex Racing team, it has been a very busy start to the year for them, and so maybe that explains why we've seen a little bit more chopping and changing. Luke McEwen and Michael Yanni, don't have World Championship focuses to really deal with. Elvis Rankin, someone that's been over in England, but with maybe split focuses at times, so always interesting to see how those partnerships work out. I think Kevin Ellis Jr., when he won his 3 in a row, did it with 3 different teammates, so that might also...
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I distinctly remember him being with someone different in every single round, so That's always interesting. Here's a look, by the way, at the... I forget how to say the folk character on the side of the car, so I'm not going to try and butcher it. However, it's always nice seeing what is the ex-COVID teammates out in this livery. One by one, they're finding their homes. Valtteri Alander made his way on over to BS competition, along with Ascari Reno. By the way, Valtteri Alander, 20-second penalty. Not surprised to hear that. Recently, Antiohola, I think, confirmed over at SimRC, so they're starting to find their homes. But for Lassie and Matty, two very quick drivers still up for grabs, Ewan, if anyone's watching.
Yeah, especially Siepler, who was very visible in this championship, in particular last season. Don't know if he quite made it to Sim Live or not. I think he was in contention on the final day, and I can't quite remember whether he made it or not, because I know the Covers team were all fighting between themselves, basically, for those places, and I think he was one of them. But anyway, I am very surprised, especially Siepler hasn't been able to find a team just yet. I think, yeah, a couple of them have, and oh goodness, who was it who snapped up a couple of them? Was it BS competition?
It was here.
Yeah.
Alander and
Rene,
yes.
Yeah, I really thought that was a really smart thing to do at the time, because you kind of keep that teammate camaraderie that those two have, but also bring their talent to the team, to a new team as well. I thought it was a really smart couple of signings for BS competition. And to be honest, I thought some of the other teams, at least signing one of them, I thought the other teams would have been good. Ahla now gone, but I'm very surprised that it's taken teams so long to sign some of these guys, because they're like, they're in the top 10 of this race right now, and we've assembled some of the best GT3 iRacers in the moment.
Well,
some of.
Did something happen to PGZ to slow them down? Because we went 3 wide for a moment, and Garcia holds on to 7th spot, but not without some nervy moments. You're right. Tumis Tatala, by the way, was with Heroic Esports as well, so that was an interesting addition. So they're all over the shop, and very good additions. We talked about this at times as well, the fact that they had such a nice environment. It wasn't just the fact that they were competing together, they were friends as well. It's always beneficial. Yeah. Here's what happened to the PGZ car, and I get the sense that we know what's going to happen here. Slow down, and it's probably through the first part of the chicane, to be totally honest, because boy did he turn in early.
Yeah, it was a little bit early, and pretty unfortunate as well. This is going to give us a view as well from on board, as maybe distracted by that car finding itself down the inside slightly early. Probably gained about 100th of a second, I guess, and forced to serve a slowdown. But
track
you
limits
stay
track
the white
limits.
Lines. Yeah, you got it. Go by the rules. Rules are rules, and all that.
Imagine if Formula One had consistency with track limits.
Hey, let's not.
Let's not really, but that's probably one of the benefits of being in the virtual world, is the fact that we can have such confidence about the exact positioning about all the different cars, whereas in the real world, that's actually a technical challenge that they've got to figure out now. As at 190, Urano car that sits second runs past that Apex Racing Academy and Urano battle. We have pit stops back underway. Josh Ladd's going to jump out of the Williams Esports Marla car, and in is going to jump Matt Farrow in his stead. Now, this is the thing that someone had suggested to me, is the fact that in LMDH we are potentially looking at 2.5 stints of fuel, and so maybe the way that drivers have broken this up, much like you were saying earlier, Ewan, is to split this up into 1 full stint and then 2 0.75 stints, if you catch my drift, just to make the tire management that little bit easier.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier about waiting for the tyres to change and then go, and don't fill the tank up, because there's no point really. You don't need it all for the middle point of the race. Just go once you've changed the tyres. Maybe that is a thing that they're doing. Farrow has made his way out now. Where is he in the standings? I can't find him. 12th place for Williams Esports Marla. That is a full-length pit stop at 42.5 seconds. Actually, the longest pit stop we've seen all day from anybody, which is somewhat of a surprise, but I guess that's what happens when you do a full service. And so it has a lot of work to do now to catch the likes of Jupp de Ligt.
Trying to check up on penalties. Remember, RaceSpot.TV/BMW. My mention of track limits brought in the arbiter of track limits, Paul Smith, into the RaceSpot TV YouTube chat. We will swiftly move away from that conversation because that could go on forever. Here is Danny Chivichabo in the Apex Racing Academy car that will bring his car down onto pit lane, and so now we should expect to see these driver swaps. So remember that if you didn't do a driver change last time, you likely did a 2-tire stop. 47 minutes means they should be able to go to the end from here, but it is going to take a little bit of fuel saving. I wonder how changing track conditions might impact these various strategy calls. We've talked about weather conditions a bunch, Ewan, and how it's maybe good conditions for racing, but the track temperature's held relatively constant. There doesn't seem to be any sort of favoritism whether you do the short stint at the start or the end of the race.
No, it doesn't seem to matter too much, and I guess that's what happens when we're doing this over the middle of the day and it's only a couple of hours long, the race. The track temperature can only change so much and really doesn't that much. I think it's maybe down 1 degree from last time we viewed it. It's really stayed very constant, and I think these guys will have been expecting that really, because over a short race like this, it's not really one of those where you have to think about that kind of thing too much. So it's... it might push to the back of their mind somewhat through this one, but we'll have to see if it plays any role. I think the fuel games or whatever, 2-stop versus 3-stop, has played far more of a role.
So, Ewan, I did not tell you to prepare for anything today, right? Just I want to make sure we're clear here.
Well, yeah, okay.
Okay, What's your favourite BMW of all time?
Oh, you didn't prepare for that at all, no. But I bet you know my answer, though.
I don't, actually.
Oh, you don't? You're going to be disappointed in me because it's the BMW M4 GT3.
Is that really your favourite
Honestly.
BMW of all time?
Yeah, it's my favourite, yeah.
Did you also just call it a Z4?
No, I said Z4.
Okay, you said Z4, okay. I heard Z.
As you're meant to. As you're meant to.
No, I agree, but that's why I had to point. Okay, I am disappointed.
I know, because we've had this conversation before.
I thought that was your favourite BMW race car.
Oh, yeah. Well, to be honest, ranking a road car above a race car for me is very difficult.
That is true. They are two different ranking systems as well.
Yeah.
If you're watching on, let us know what your favourite BMW of all time is. Whether it's a road car or a race car. Very curious what you think. We talked a lot. I've talked a lot about the looks of the BMW M4 GT3. Ewan, it's the first time you're here on the BMW M SIM Cup here in 2023. I said this last time to Lewis. I really, really like the look of this BMW M Hybrid V8. It genuinely, from the front, may be my favorite of the new prototypes. Now, not from all angles, but from the front, it is my favorite.
We could get into some very controversial takes on LMDHs and GTPs and whatever, but I don't disagree actually. I think especially when it's dark and the grille is lit up and whatever, it does look fantastic, and really low slung as well, and even like from opposite end it doesn't look bad at all. So I don't disagree, but there are some ones that are also up there as well.
If they want to take any inspiration from me, the LEDs at the front, can you customize them to your heart's content, or are you limited?
I don't know.
I feel like that would be a homologation safety issue, but if the FIA is watching, let them run whatever LED colors they want.
They are allowed it on grills of other cars. I remember back in a long time ago. Do you remember the old Bentley GT3 back in like 2016 kind of era? They used to have a green number in the grill.
Oh, that big old front end. How could you forget?
Yeah.
We take a look at the BMW M4 GT3, and we've said this before. It's not a bad-looking car. It's definitely a car that you can make look better if you stylize the front grille, which is where my suggestion for the LEDs comes in. Look at Arnage, who have used a little bit of pink in the grille to kind of help out the design. It's not helped out the speed, though, because Elvis Rankin slides up to 5th.
Yeah, just through with relative ease there, and once Rankin was basically through there, David Toft deciding to lift off, which is probably the better idea there. It just makes sure that he doesn't, force that battle to go on for any longer than it needed to. But yeah, you certainly do need to do some things to the front end of that car to make it look a little bit better, with just keep it as dark as possible down there, and it's absolutely fine, as these two teams have done.
Our mention, by the way, of track limits, not just on the RaceSpotTV YouTube chat, but in the iRacing Esports Network chat as well, has kicked off some things about FIA consistency. So we'll swerve away from those chat comments instead to talk about favorite BMWs. iRacing Esports Network, I said this last time, I think, or me or Lewis did, one of the two. BMW M1 Pro car, fantastic looking machine. Paul Smith says BMW 320i 1996 Super Touring car. So that's going back to what was some of those old BMW art cars as well, just absolutely stunning. Dominic Hoffman out of the race, and that's not because his car is in trouble, it's because he's in pit lane and has handed over to Danny Lorenzo, who's going to roll off of the lane, and after a full service stop that should take him to the end, finds himself in 4th position on track. The question is going to be, where does Joop de Ligt come out in comparison when the 92 rolls to pit lane?
And it's a much smaller gap from Urano to Joop de Ligt there than it is from Matt Farrow to Urano. Farrow now 45 seconds, best part of 3/4 of a minute.
There was an issue in the pit stop for Matt Farrow, which saw him go back up on the jacks, 42.5 seconds stationary compared to 30 for the rest.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense in that scenario then. Just less than 30 seconds between those two cars, and I don't know whether this car has got to do another stop.
No, I think they're good. 41 minutes to go,
yeah,
I think they're good.
I think so.
The good thing as well is they probably don't have to do too much fuel saving or anything either. They can probably push to pretty aggressively to the end. De Ligt's on lap 18 of his run. He's probably got quite a ways to go. Might only see him come on in with 20 minutes to go.
I think so. It went nearly 50 minutes first stint around, so if they're on that level of fuel saving again, then it will be quite some time until we see that pit stop for the leader. But all this is pointing towards, for me, a possible Urano 1-2 right now, which looked really quite unlikely earlier on.
I mean, it's becoming a thing. Urano lockouts of the podiums, double podiums, etc., etc.
But the difference with this one is that they haven't just got to the front and just smashed everyone out the park. They've started mid-pack, basically, and strategized their way.
Dominic Hoffman worked up, 12 positions or something, because he qualified down in 14.
Oh, that's true.
No, you're right. They have not had it all their own way, but they always have seemingly, especially in this LMDH, just found a way to be up towards the front. Across of Private Endurance Series, across of the beginning of our iRacing special events, it's been remarkable how quickly they have adapted to this car. Maybe as well, just putting a lot more focus with top-level drivers in than any of the other teams. Obsidian had Pedro Sanchez-Albert, who's made his way over to BS Competition. BS Competition is a team that, for the most part, we would have associated with GT3 cars in the past. Redline, we haven't seen much of them in LMDH. Where's Coanda? We haven't seen much of Coanda at all on iRacing in 2023. Apex, they've got an academy car here and there. It's Urano that consistently are here and competing week after week.
Yeah, and this is why they were right up there for me in terms of a team of 2022. They were right up there in my opinion, because the amount of racing they do and how long they spend at the front as well, and it's rolled into 2023 as well, almost as if the new year has never been, and they're still going here, into the first half of 2023, or first third. So it's been fantastic for them, and for them to do not only just winning by going at the front and blowing everyone away, but also by winning in different ways as well. Obviously they've not done it yet, but by winning in different ways as well really increases their stock, in my opinion, because they are alongside some really fantastic teams like Obsidian Racing, Apex Racing Academy, BS Turner are here, Williams as well. We saw Movano earlier on. These are real top prototype teams in iRacing, and they're making it look pretty easy at the moment.
And hopefully next time Urano will have highlights to make our life easier as commentators as well. And so then we can fully congratulate Joop de Ligt on doing all that hard work for us, because it hasn't paid out on track, at least for us, just yet. A couple more comments coming in about favorite BMWs. Now this, of course, was one that I wholeheartedly will agree with. The Top Gear BMW from that Silverstone 24 Hours, with the sponsors that I'm not allowed to name without getting in trouble. Yes, Ewan remembered what some of those sponsors were. 1972 BMW 3.0 CSL. That's also one of those legendary BMW machines. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought of another one, but I'll need to find what it is first, because I don't know what it's called.
Okay, I was going to say, if you could pick anything that isn't the Z4, what would it be? So we'll give you some time to go off and figure out what car you've just remembered about, and then we'll catch up with you, hopefully, before the end of the day. Fabio Royer in the Simsa Esports car has spun around on the exit of the hairpin down at the bottom of the hill. That's a very peculiar place to go around.
It is. It would be odd to see someone just lose it on power like that, just out of that corner. So I would be surprised about that, and more expecting there to be contact with someone else. But you never know. Oh dear, there's more wrong with this car than looks to be the case at the moment.
Let's take a look at what happened.
Been hit.
Yes, Turner just bump, and then into the wall.
That's been in the wall.
That's why it's taken on the damage. Let's ride with Pedro Sanchez Albert. I mean, they already are
clumsy.
They're already getting one penalty. I'm pretty sure they're getting a second.
They're certainly getting a second one there. That's so clumsy again from BS Turner. It happened earlier on. I mean, the first one you could chalk off as just an honest mistake from Alanda because of all of the stuff that was going on at the time. It was a high pressure, very intense situation. But I mean, that's a slow developing battle when you're supposed to be in the rhythm of a stint, and to just and when there's first contact as well, he doesn't even lift off. Just goes anyway, even though there's a car in front fighting for its life. So it's really clumsy.
There is Simsa into pit lane, and that's going to be them done and dusted for the day, you'd have to assume. There is a fast repair, don't forget, but that's only really useful if you can get it to the top of the hour and not affect your strategy. The fast repair really just helps you get your car a little bit more factory fresh, if you will. Vince Cusi points out an interesting point. Only 2 teams in GT3 have been able to dip below into the 155s so far this race. Not a surprise to hear that it's Team Redline that leads. That's been one of those cars. I also don't think it's a surprise to hear that the other car that's done it's the one that's gained 16 positions so far today. Elvis Rankin in the 99 machine, and Luke McEwen currently in 5th. 155.973, their fastest lap of the race.
Yeah, great job from them so far, and I think you said earlier on that a podium's not impossible for them, maybe even top 2, but I think at this stage podium is maybe what they could reach, but then again they have reached that point in the order where they're actually racing up against drivers who are probably about their level now because they're right up towards the front. I don't think they're a class above everyone else and they're working their way through. They're right up there inside the top 5, and so now they've reached the top 5 in terms of pace. They're kind of running at the same lap time as those around them, which is going to make this last half an hour very slow progress ranking, or it's going to look like slow progress anyway.
How important qualifying is in this series, right? Especially knowing that you burn 1 lap and only get 1 opportunity. The pressure that puts on drivers. It wasn't just McEwen that struggled, let's not forget. We saw Redline and Ole Steinbraten, our previous race winners, fail to set a time and then got caught out trying to work their way through the field. You've got to make sure that you nail qualifying, which is going to be so important moving forward. We've got Watkins, Spa, Fuji and Road Atlanta all coming up. These are tracks where I can say from personal experience that they can be a little bit frustrating at times with the off tracks.
Well, this is where I slightly bring into question the sensibleness of going for the strategy that they do with the really slow first lap and a faster second one, because it's one-shot qualifying from there, and with the dangers of some of these circuits with getting an off-track and meaning that you have no lap at all, it's really, really high risk. So, I do question the sensibleness behind that and whether it's really a good idea. Clearly it's quicker, but, do you really want to go through that risk every time? It's not one I'd be willing to take, personally.
I agree, but there's also a reason.
We're not up this level, clearly.
And we also don't maybe know how big an impact that has. Let's say it's worth 0.3 of a second. At this level, 0.3 is an age, right? So you have to kind of do it, right?
Yeah, but if you're 0.3 off pole, you're not going to be last. You'll be in the top 10. It's fine.
At this level, you might. What was the gap in qualifying this time? I've forgotten off the top of my head. Yeah, let me go.
I can't find it.
Let me go and look. It was a 54.6 for pole position. A 54.9 got you 6th spot. Which, okay, maybe at this track it's not so bad, but I'll give you the example of the World Championship. First round that we had this year. F1, we talk about wanting to be within 107%, right?
Yeah.
We were within 100.7%.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. I do get the point, and obviously I'm not saying that, you know, these drivers are wrong for doing what they do. I just think it's really high risk for someone, you know, effectively battling for a championship. Luke McKeown is anyway. He's only 16 points off the championship lead coming into today, and do you really want to take that risk because at the moment their deficit to those two red line drivers is going to double, or his deficit, sorry, is going to double to those, and you know, would that have happened if they'd have gone for 2 faster laps? I'm pretty convinced it wouldn't have.
Again, I think this is where I don't want to say, Ewan, that your lack of experience is showing, but
lack of experience. I mean,
at this level, 3/10 is a lot.
I know what you mean, but it's just I don't know. It's not.
Ask any top-level driver, and they'll say they'll all do it, which tells you all you need to know. Here's a look, by the way, at the ATRS car. Race control is going to have to take a look at that Urano machine, but it's fortunately not the one that's leading the race. It's the 91. Vlad Kimichev. It's been a difficult day for them overall.
I'm not sure that was a. That move was on, I would say, for Kimichev. I don't know.
I don't know. I disagree there.
I don't know.
That's one of those things where, sure, you can make the move, but you're both just costing each other time.
Yeah, I think you've probably got it right. I mean, you can make the move, but should you make the move is maybe the thing that I should probably say, rather than it was on. Because, yeah, he probably could have made it, but should he have made it? Maybe not. I don't know. It's one of those hard ones to call, really, where prototype drivers will blame the GT for turning in, the GT drivers will blame the prototype for diving down the inside. It's one of those unwinnable ones.
Blame everyone but yourself, as is the modus operandi of all racing drivers. Now, 20-second penalty came down for the BS Turner machine earlier. Does it surprise you if I told you there's another 20-second penalty coming down their way?
No. Well, to be honest, the fact that both the penalties are the same is the only thing that surprises me, because, in my opinion, the one at the hairpin was a lot worse. But it doesn't really matter, does it? They're both hefty penalties, and deserved, unfortunately.
Agree. Deserved. Checking in with our iRacing Esports Network, by the way, with 30 minutes to go. Someone saying that Ewan likes the Z4 GT3 because it drives amazing. Ewan, how many times have you driven the Z4?
Not in iRacing, but I have driven it in plenty of sims before.
I'm throwing you under the bus.
I used to drive a lot. I used to do a lot of driving.
Commentators race coming up at some point this year. We'll do it.
Better not be December, though.
We'll see. I did win the iRacing 12 Hours of Bathurst in the Z4, so I have fond memories of the car.
Exactly.
Doesn't mean it's my favourite BMW, though.
It's won plenty of races in real life as well. One of the reasons, I guess, that has maybe made my connection with it fonder than maybe it otherwise would be. It's the first Spa 24 Hours I watched, maybe 2015.
Don't even remember when it was.
I can't remember if it was 15 or 16. And basically a BMW M4 won by a couple of laps, and it was I can remember what livery it was, but I can't remember who ran the team.
It sounds like what we expected Formula 1 to be like this weekend. Fortunately, it sounds like we might actually have some more fun.
Maybe. Won by 2 laps.
I heard there was some rain potentially forecast for today. So.
I was heard people fearing that the race might not even happen at all because there's so much rain.
Oh!
Which is equally as much of a problem.
Yeah, that was not something that I was aware of.
Okay. It could be.
That's very possible in Florida. I mean,
it didn't come from a verified source, by the way. It was just a rumor I saw.
At the end of the day, what is a verified source at this point anymore in the world of Formula 1?
There's no no primary sources on weather, to be fair.
No, not even that. This week was maybe the most ridiculous week that I've ever seen. So we went from Brad Pitt's going to be driving on track with all the other cars. in the formation lap at Silverstone too. Mercedes is building a car that's going to get them out of testing regulation. One of the most ridiculous weeks in motorsports that I've ever experienced. It's very cool that we're getting a motorsports movie coming up, but I just want to see the movie. I don't care about all this drama building up to it. That's beside the point.
That's what's it called? Publicity, all that kind of thing. Promotion.
Kind of. I don't know. I just think social media going wild.
Well, that's why I don't.
Neither of us
check it too often.
Yeah, we try and stay away from it. Here's a look, by the way, at the BS Turner car that has 40 seconds worth of time penalties to come to it post-race. So that means that they are definitely not fighting for 6th position. They are not going to be probably scoring points, all things considered. The office finds themselves about 38 seconds behind them right now. So BS Turner might actually need to turn up the speed to try and get some points on the board.
This is what I was going to say. This is not a battle for 5th place, as you say, but this is a battle for Pedro Sanchez-Albert to keep the pace up. To keep the pace up as much as he possibly can here, because, as you say, he is very close to grabbing that 1 point, and it will be important for him. Any point's going to matter at this stage. He is 5th place in the points going into today. BS Turner and BS Competition have chopped and changed their lineups just a little bit throughout the season so far, like Apex have, so they are all over the place a little bit, but they very much need to keep the pace up, and being stuck behind Marcus Stoholm as they are right now is not going to help them do that.
Here's Owen Carroll, drops from the jack, so he's done 2 tyres now. It was about 20 seconds stationary in the first stop for the drivers on the alternate strategy. It's about the same as Carroll drops and rolls. He'll be behind his teammate Marcus Stoholm, behind Pedro Sanchez-Albert, and directly alongside with Matt Farrow, directly out into a battle. 4 cars abreast almost. Farrow's going to slide up forward to 5th spot, but Carroll, you've got to assume, is in a pretty good spot with 2 fresh tyres on his machine to try and build up and potentially grab a podium spot.
He very much could. We'll see whether he can in the next 25 minutes, but that was a fantastic move by Pedro Sanchez-Albert down the inside. It was very much like what Eduardo Leo did to Patrick Wolff, only even later, really, and without the lap car as well. It was a big dive on the brakes down towards turn number 1, and he's really marched away afterwards as well. Matt Farrow also getting through into 4th.
Down the hill into the hairpin, and now here's Joop de Ligt rolling onto pit lane. Danny Lorenzo, his teammate in that number 90 machine, heads down the back straightaway, and this is the one that we were waiting for. 30.8 seconds stationary for Lorenzo in his stop 9 laps ago. It was a well-executed pit stop cycle, and now as Dominic Hoffman watches on as his teammate heads into the final corner, Dylan Shrivens watches as his teammate up on the jacks, drops and waits for the signal to roll. It's going to be close, but you get the feeling that with the length that the 92 has to travel before it will release itself from the limiter, that margin is going to be a full 7 or plus seconds by the time he's up to speed. It is Urano 1 and 2. The question really is going to be who joins them on the podium.
Yeah, that's where the real battle is. It's not between the Urano drivers, even between themselves here for 1 and 2. It's entirely for 3rd place, because Urano have once again dominated here, and they've gotten away from the rest of the field through strategy on this occasion, but once again completely untouched by everybody else. And it's interesting that the Urano teammates who were leading the championship coming into today are not one of the 2 involved in that leading fight. At the moment, it looks like Hoffman and Lorenzo are going to be the 2 to take over the championship lead, maybe, at this point.
See how it all plays out. BS Turner trying to turn up the afterburners, of course. Still 23 minutes to go. Not expecting any more pit stops from this point forward. So it's all now just down to traffic management and keeping out of trouble. Elvis Rankin is just really slided on past the grid and go 001 as Rico Wenzel allows the 99 to now step up into 4th position. It's only 4.2 seconds up to the the first Apex Racing Academy car in the field. That's Johan Royer in the 97. Do you think Elvis has enough time to be able to close that gap?
It's going to be close. It's got 4 seconds at the moment, 23 minutes. That's going to be about 12 laps. So what's that per lap? About a third of a second, maybe? Half a second, if he wants to get there in time. I don't know if it's quite possible. But last lap, yeah, a little bit slower. Was he? Yeah, a little bit slower last lap. I don't think it's quite going to be enough time, unfortunately. But it depends, really, because that is another Apex car in front. Are they going to swap them over? Maybe. I would be surprised. But you never know.
Pretty consistent from ranking, all things considered, as you take a look at the lap times for the 99. You check in with Royer. They're also pretty consistent, but a couple of tenths slower here and there. And so it's going to be a nervy 20 minutes in the Apex Racing camp, especially given that if ranking closes on Royer, there is a very real danger that Rico Wenzel will close up into that fight as well. Mike Partington, that's not the right way through the chicane. He takes the fast chicane, trying to get himself back going again. This is the Williams Esports Chill Blast car, not the one that we said had the pit stop error and issue previously in the race, and so it's a car that's just not had a good one overall.
Yeah, unfortunately, not so much. Still outside the top 10 here for Partington, getting back going again. And interestingly, they have got a livery on, so that's a bizarre one. And maybe we find no reason why here. Just having to stand on the brakes a little bit too much into the chicane and really bounces over that curb.
Does a good job not to slide back up into the path of the oncoming traffic. Just right on board. It's the rear brakes that just are so easy to lock, and we see it so frequently, and so we know just how difficult a phenomenon it must be to manage. Drivers do what they can in the setup to dial that out, but for drivers of this caliber to still get caught out by that, it goes to show it's not an easy car to get the most of, and it shows Urano have really gotten a level of comfort from this car that is so important to being fast.
And you've only got to go and look back at races that were happening about 6 months ago when this car came out, or 5 months ago when this car came out, and look at the way that the top drivers were scrambling and flailing everywhere in the opening few races in this car. It was a really difficult car to get a handle on. Now they've got a little bit more of it, but even so, it is difficult on occasion. You can still get it wrong. So yeah, these guys do make it look easy, but it's definitely not.
A little bit wide there as we check in with the Apex Racing Academy duo. Now remember, the battle for fourth is effectively the battle for the podium after the 2 20-second penalties get added to the BS Turner car at the end of this race. And so for Marcus Solholm as well as for Owen Carroll, the 2 seconds that they have in front of them to that bright white Williams car are 2 seconds that they will not want to see right now. They'll want to be as close as possible so that through this cycle of traffic they can just put a little bit more pressure onto Matt Farrow. And for those that missed out on why Matt Farrow had a slightly longer pit stop, well, after a full service, 30 seconds, the crew decided to put him up on the jacks again, and he spent another 10 seconds before he could drop and roll and get out of there. So 10 seconds compromised, and without the 10 seconds, it could have been a much closer fight for second, and Joop de Ligt wouldn't be so comfortable.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit closer. Well, yeah, a lot closer, I guess, as you say, because if you think about it, if he was 10 seconds further in front, he wouldn't have had to deal with as much traffic as he has done in terms of passing cars in his class than he has done in this race so far, certainly in the back end. So, yeah, I think it might have been a close one for second, but even so, Williams needed to start up a little bit further up towards the front and get up there a little bit further towards the front earlier on than they really did in this race to challenge the leader. I just look back at this race and just wonder what other people could have done to stop Urano. But other than Movano's mistake, well, it wasn't even their mistake, other than Movano's incident, I can't really see moments in the race where other people dropped the ball so much.
I think I agree with you. And I'm trying to wonder, heading into Watkins Glen, what might change, because of course that's going to be a slightly different race. Red line from the lead of GT3 on the exit of the hairpin have gone around, and now Alexei Nesov builds with momentum up to the Michael Schumacher S, and he's going to blast on past the red line car, who throws a block. Lallem doesn't want to give up this lead after building a 10-second buffer side by side and door to door with 20 minutes to go. Nesov off the track, surely a fight that will come down to the checkered flag.
Well, this is going to be very aggressive because immediately Pinto runs Nesov out wide onto the tarmac on the right-hand side there. These two are going to race so hard to the end of this one. It's going to be a fantastic battle. Pinto's going to block the inside now. Nesov will tuck in behind. big drama down at the hairpin, and all of a sudden we've got an absolute race on now.
So, surely not a self-drop there from Lalem, surely helped around. That's Urano's number 90, the race-leading car, who made a mistake. And yes, there was some netcode from the two of them, but the contact undeniable, and Lalem with a hard hit into the wall.
Well, when you saw that replay start and the Urano car was right near, you thought, well, have they done their teammates a favour here? Well, they have, of course, but not intentionally by any means. That was an honest mistake from the race leader that has really put this battle into the equation. Now Pinto has got to do one of the drives of his career almost, to defend and hold these guys off, because he'll Lalem, I should say, which I'm still in first stint land in my head. Lalem has got to do a real good drive here to keep everyone behind, because the hit he had on the wall there was not insignificant.
They got to be careful with traffic, because look at the Apex Racing Academy cars. Split the leaders. Already now a full second. Royer's there as well. So it's not 2 cars, 3 cars. And if they fight, guess who gets brought into consideration? Elvis Rankin is not too far behind. Final 20 minutes starting to pick up. It's Race Clutch and RD Simsport fighting for 9th and 10th.
Yeah, LMDH battle's still going on, and the battle for third is not even that far away in the final 15 minutes either. So it's ramping up once again in these final points paying positions. Are these guys close enough to overtake Sanchez Albert? Not quite, I don't think. Even with those 2 20-second penalties, these guys are effectively scrapping for, or they're not battling for 8th, is what I should say. They're not going to jump over him.
They probably need about 5-6 seconds over Albert, which may come if Albert gets passed by Matt Farrow, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. Still Carroll and Solholm dropping time to Matt Farrow as well, so I don't think that we are really going to see a proper fight for the final step of the podium. And if Matt Farrow has been told by his team that Sanchez Albert has already got the penalty, surely the instruction is going to be hold position and do not force the issue. Speaking of forcing the issues, I think Alexei Nesov knew that he had one opportunity for the lead, and that was it, because already the gap starts to build up once again. Redline, Lalem and Pinto have a rocket ship here at the Nürburgring.
Absolutely unbelievable from Lalem. I can't believe that is not affecting him more damage-wise, to be honest. I really can't believe that, but clearly he's not too damaged at all. And with that little bit of traffic, Lalem was given a bit of a gap. He's given a second, basically, and he's taking a second and a half already. So, wow, I'm surprised. And the more Nesov looks in his mirrors here with Royer just behind him, the more that gap's going to grow as well.
Let me just throw something into the air. Number 90 car. Yes, there was netcode. Was that penalty worthy? What's race control going to think about the fact that in the act of passing a slower class car, Urano went off the track, got a little bit squirrely, and the resulting drama out of that was the GT3 leader in the wall?
I would argue no. I'm not in the stewards, but I would argue no, because it goes back to that thing we were talking about, I think last weekend maybe, Arjuna, about
penalise the action, not the court.
Yes,
yeah,
the
consequence.
Because if he makes that slide and that mistake on his own, we're not going to notice it. We're not even going to pick it up on a replay. We might not even think about it if we were watching him live do that. You know, it's just one of the things that happens. But because he was beside the GT3 leader is the only reason we've noticed it even happened.
So I know what you mean there, and I agree, because we had this discussion last week or 2 weeks ago. Probably every weekend we have this discussion. Penalise the action, not the consequence. However, the action here isn't that he went off the track by himself. The action is he went off the track side by side with the slower class car. I honestly don't know what I'd do in that situation, because it's one of those things where if you're going to give a let's say 5-second penalty, that seems pretty minor, right? That's the lead that's just changed hands then, because the gap between first and second is 5 seconds, which I know is not what we should be thinking about. I'm not in race control though, so I'm allowed to say stuff like that.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it could even drop them off the podium if Elvis Rankin gets going, and he might well do here.
Oh, no. To be clear, red line should not get a penalty.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong class.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking, red line do nothing wrong. Red line run their line. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, red line.
You've already irritated the Apex Racing team today, Ewan, by throwing, who was it, Luke McEwen under the bus, be careful.
I didn't actually irritate them, did I?
I hope not, because I know what you meant.
I don't know. I've been irritating everyone today, to be honest.
Sebring fans.
Saying all kinds of things. Yeah, Sebring fans, people over the age of 23.
So basically half the world, most of the world's population.
Yeah, about 75%. Or 66, whatever. So I don't need to add to that list anymore with one of the biggest teams in sim racing.
So, what I can tell you is Race Controller made their determination. Warning to Urano.
And that's all it needed, in my opinion.
So that makes our life nice and easy. We're not having to work through any sort of drama. But again, penalize the action, not the consequence. For the most part, that is a fair point. However, I will just say, if someone does something seemingly innocuous at Long Beach that causes a track blocker, for example, in my mind, you're not penalizing the consequence if you're more harsh for actions like that. I don't know. That's where the line slightly gets blurred.
Well, this is why I do sometimes not accept the idea of not punishing a consequence or whatever.
Exactly.
Or whatever, because sometimes I don't even think, and maybe this would be controversial for some people, again, I don't to get myself in more trouble, but sometimes I don't even think that's a bad thing if you're punishing a consequence in certain situations. Obviously, it's not a rule to live by in racing and stewarding, but sometimes I don't even hate it when a consequence, you're basing it off a consequence. I don't even hate it. I think, fair enough or whatever. Because it seems like the fair thing to do, in my opinion, but it's a very it should be more case by case basis, in my opinion, than we really view it as sometimes.
So I see a comment suggesting that because there was netcode involved, there should be no penalties. Netcode is just prediction at the end of the day. Now, whether the prediction is always right is a different thing, but it's something that everyone deals with. And so, let's say in that exact incident, Redline took terminal damage. Do we still think that that a warning is sufficient? Because again, the Urano car made the decision to go to the outside, got into the gravel. I'm not arguing. I want to be clear. I'm playing devil's advocate here because I think the warning is fine. I'm not trying to say that's not the case. I'm trying to explain why race control's life is so difficult. I think that's really where I'm going with this. Because
it's hard not to punish the consequence sometimes. When you see terminal damage to Chris Lillum's car or whatever, he was in the GT3 lead by quite some distance, you're thinking, yeah, maybe it shouldn't just be a warning, So I do see what you mean by that. But because it's just naturally, as a human, it changes the way you view the incident, first and foremost. So, it's an interesting one. But in my opinion, for that one, Urano should be able to get away with it. And Lullum looks like he's fine anyway, because he's doubled his lead again now to 2 seconds.
Somehow the car is fine, by the way, because...
Yeah, I've no idea how.
You commentated on a race at Alton Park a few weeks ago where we had these springy tyre bundles that were just like propelling cars back out. Seems like we had a very soft tyre bundle on the inside of the hairpin at the bottom of the hill as well, so I don't think these drivers will be complaining. Less than 10 minutes to go, it's settled down. The Apex Racing Academy cars are swapped. Owen Carroll in front of Marcus Solom, but they're still 6 seconds off the back of Williams Esports, who are in 4th position, which is technically net 3rd after BS Turner's penalty. There's not much fighting actually going on right now, so the main thing that I'm keeping my eye on right now, Ewan, is whether Elvis Rankin, who is only 2.5 seconds off the back of the Apex Racing Academy car in 3rd, is going to have enough time to be able to close. He's, I think, going to run out of time, and with 5 more minutes would have been able to get the pass done.
I think he is going to run out of time as well here. Gained, lost 0.4 of a second actually on that last lap to Johan Roy, and it wasn't a very good lap from him. It was the slowest lap inside the top 10. A little bit of an off lap for him, unfortunately. And maybe that has just put him out of reach now, because I think they'll have to do 4 more laps here. And with 2.5 seconds, he needs to gain by about 3/4 of a second a lap. So I don't think it's quite going to happen for him. So it's going to be 4th place. Good recovery from him, and especially for Luke McKeown to only lose 13 points to Lullum and Pinto. I believe he's got the fastest lap as well. Was it him that set that? Oh no, they haven't even got it anymore. Lullam and Pinto have got it.
Yes.
So that'd be an extra point for one of those two.
I think it's Pinto that got it too, by the way.
I think so. Lullam's certainly not going to do it now with the damage, you wouldn't imagine. But yes, decent damage limitation, but not ideal.
So, confirm it's Pinto that set that fastest lap with about 3 laps left to go in his stint. So, that was an important point to add to the total, because remember, even though they're fighting as a team together, they are racing against each other in the championship. It's always an interesting distinction that we get with that. And especially since there's no tickets to BMW Sim Live, it's about championship money that gets paid out. I always find this confusing, Ewan. Let's say Urano were running 1, 2, and 3, all 3 of their cars within a second, but no one was behind them. How would you determine how do you decide when team orders are fair? How do you just say, okay, we'll split the money equally if no one fights? Because honestly, I think that's probably the smartest call for the team.
It's an awkward one though, isn't it? Because you think you get the championship winners thinking, well, I've won a whole championship here, and I'm sharing with these guys who finished 10th or whatever. So you know, it's a difficult one. I think if there were if honestly, from a pure, not emotionally attached, hypothetical team manager situation, I would put the Trivens Delict car first because they're last in the championship, the second car second, and the first car third, if you see what I mean, to kind of balance it out as much as possible. But I get that is just never going to happen because you've got to get about 6 people to agree on all of this, which is really difficult.
Yeah, 6 minutes to go, by the way. Still no real battle at the front, although it's down to 2.6 between the Urano teammates, with traffic maybe playing a bit of a factor between them. Not sure how much closer they're realistically going to get. And at the same token, mentioned it earlier, even though Matt Farrow's closing up on BS Turner, if I'm in the Williams eSport camp and I know there's 40 seconds of penalty heading the way of that number 96, I'm telling Matt Farrow to just hold position and stay out of trouble.
Oh yeah, Matt Farrow's got to stay absolutely where he is, and BS Turner will want him to stay there as well because they need to stretch out this gap as much as they possibly can. At the moment they're going to finish in 8th place. They've done enough to overhaul Obsidian actually at the moment as well. They're not going to overhaul Vlad Kimichev, I wouldn't imagine, because they need to gain another 13 seconds in the last 5 minutes, which is not going to happen. But for the moment, Pedro Sanchez Alves has done a good job to at least limit the damage that has been done by the 2 penalties. I think one done by each driver as well, which has really killed them in this race.
Valtteri Landa did it with LMDH traffic. I forget how it all played out with Pedro Sanchez Alves, but I think it was a GT3, wasn't it? Here's a look down the hill into turn number 1. Hard mode, Lassie Urainen. It's not much what you can do, and the LMDH locks the rear brakes. That was Sergio Borja in the office, number 33.
One of those incidents where you think, could that have gone any worse for me there at all? And I'm not sure it could have done. For him on that occasion. He did lose a place as well to Maxence Godinho in the Apex Racing Academy car. They'll still get points, Will Urainen and Siepeler, but yeah, one of those really frustrating ones where you have to come to a dead stop through no fault of your own.
Got away with it in terms of no damage. Didn't lose position either outside of the one to Godinho. So that's fortunate. They were already at the tail end of the top 10. Not much points being thrown onto the board for either of them. Short time left in this one, and let's not forget that we're going to make our way back over to the US for the next round. Daytona, Sebring, and Road America. We had a fun little journey around some of the best tracks in the US, but we'll land up and we'll head over to the home of the 6 Hours of the Glen. We'll head to upstate New York to Watkins Glen. That's a fast and flowing track. That's going to be very different to what we've had here today.
It is very different, and it's going to come quite around the Watkins Glen 6 Hours as well, which is ironic because the Nürburgring 24 Hours is around this event as well, even though it's on a very different layout. So it will be interesting. It will really play to the strengths of the prototypes. I've got to say that Watkins Glen in a GT car doesn't excite me greatly, I've got to be honest, but in a prototype it's absolutely fantastic, especially since it's been resurfaced. It's quite considerably quicker than it was about 10 years ago because of that, and so it's It's absolutely fantastic to drive in one of these cars. It's going to be very enjoyable for the LMDH category, you'd imagine.
Here's a look at another incident, unfortunately, for ATRS Esports. Oh, and not the first time. They've just been tagged from behind. I think that was a 14. So the RD SimSport car that sits inside the top 10 might not sit in the top 10 for much longer if Race Control looks at that.
No, certainly not, because that was once again really careless from, oh goodness, from one of the prototypes. Pedro Sanchez Albert is making it very, making it very, very clear to Matt Farrow that he needs to stay on the racing line and do his best pace possible. Well, Matt Farrow just wanting to, go for the battle because he's bored, I'd imagine, just wants to.
Sometimes we talk about this in the VCO Esports Racing League, how there's no need to go for the fight because all you'll do is get your other teammates in more trouble. However, in the case of Matt Farrow, usually a good hand in these wheel-to-wheel battles. 2 minutes to go means they'll have an additional 2 laps, including this one, to work their way around the track. And not much traffic to deal with, fortunately, as well. So they may be able to have a little bit of fun heading into the closing stages of this race. I do get the sense that there is going to be some appeals and whatnot sent in by the drivers at the conclusion of this race, given that it's been a little bit crazy. So provisional race results at the end is what I'm saying.
It will be provisional race results, yeah. And of course we'll update you on the championship standings at the start of the next round, as we did for this one. Just saw another comment saying how much I love resurfacing, which is not entirely true, but it's just a fact I know about Watkins Glen. So
there is a trend that's building here. I'm seeing it. Vince Cusi does also point out, by the way, that Chris Lullum did a 58.5 with his damaged car. Faster than everyone else's fastest laps of the race. Just goes to show in context, even with potential damage, how quick they have been. BS Turner going to block up in towards the hairpin as we're going to get ready to start the final lap of the race. And no move going to be offered there. Here is your race leader, though. Nice and calm for Urano, running 1 and 2 at the front. Onto the final lap of round number 4 of the BMW M SIM Cup.
Yeah, it's a photo shoot now for Urano, really, isn't it? It's 1 and 2 by quite some distance. 20 seconds is the closest non-Urano car in 3rd place right now. And even that car's going to jump down the order later on as a result of penalties. So, once again, it's been absolutely dominant, and in the championship lead will be the leading car of Daniel Alves Lorenzo and Dominic Hoffman. I will take it over from Vlad Kimichev and Jonas Vormar, although Kimichev will finish this race in 6th place and will gain some points for that, so they'll be almost level on points.
Race Clutch and Obsidian are fighting as they get ready to start their final lap of the race. It's going to be Enric Andre that goes around the outside of Juan Valero in that number 9 machine. Slightly different story for Redline as they pick up their final lap of the race here, Ewan. After the damage, they've done a great job to build up a 5-second buffer once again. Dominant display as they look to grab consecutive victories here for the 3rd round in a row.
Yeah, the incident has made their win look even more impressive, arguably, because they've been able to suffer through with the damage, and it hasn't even looked like they've been suffering with it. Surely that's got to have done something to that car, because it was pretty significant contact down at the hairpin. But clearly, Lullum's been able to drive around it and drive away.
What a start to 2023 it has been for Urano Esports. They have grown with this BMW M Hybrid as it's debuted in the real and virtual worlds. It's a 4th round in a row that it's Urano Esports on top, and with a double podium, they'll celebrate heading out of the Nürburgring with plenty of points on the board in this BMW M SIM Cup. It's going to be the battle between Pedro Sanchez Albert and Matt Farrow to the line. Sanchez Albert will grab 3rd on the provisional results, although Williams Esports will get promoted after the post-race penalty that goes the way of that number 96. It'll be a while before we see Team Redline come towards the line as they'll grab a 3rd victory on the bounce in this GT3 class. Ewan, we're starting to see favourites dominate and assert themselves heading to the midway point of the season.
Yeah, I said at the start of the broadcast that GT3 wasn't quite getting a dominant team just yet, but we might just have to change that now, because Redline, championship leaders coming into today, have taken their 2nd win of the season now.
Remarkable stuff from Team Redline and Pinto and Lullum. Saw them charge through the field last time as well, albeit not as dominant as they were here. It was Steinbrat and Invecchio that showed this turn of speed. and America's national park of speed. We'll wait for the rest of the cars to come across the line. We saw 41 take to the green flag, about 33 ending up seeing the checkered. A race that had its ebbs and flows, and between all of the ebbs, the flows had plenty of chaos.
Yeah, especially the first 90 minutes or so was really quite exciting indeed. There was a lot going on, and a lot of strategy as well. Probably the most we've ever seen in LMDH, but it seemed to be that the strategies were pretty even in the end, because two fairly different ones from Urano did work out well. It does make you wonder though what SRC Movano could have done if they had remained in this race for that little bit longer.
Double donuts for Urano there as they celebrate the 1 and 2. Always a great way to sign off from one of these BMW M SIM Cup races. As a reminder, provisional race results, although I don't think there's anything provisional about the victory and the 1 and 2 for Urano. Lorenzo leads Delict across the line, while scored on third is BS Turner. They're going to drop, though, a full minute off of your race leader. Will still hold on to 7th, though. Some points accumulated for Orlando and Sanchez Albert for Matt Farrow in that Williams Esports Marla car. Without that 10-second additional time in the pit lane in the final cycle, they would have been third easily and comfortably. Owen Carroll and then Marcus Solom, the two Apex Racing Academy cars, not able to convert the qualifying speed into race pace, while Urano Esports Data Group across the line in 7th for Kimichev in the 91. Henrik Andre in the Race Clutch red car in front of Obsidian and the Williams Esports Chill Blast cars to score points in the top 10. Just missing out RD Simsport, the last car scored on the lead lap, with Simsa, RD, Simsport, Samsoy, Kanan, The Office, and Genesis Simsport all finishing this race. ART Sim Racing, Virtual Drivers by TX3, and then SRC Movano Corsa, who led and really were the strong runners in the early stages, all not finishing the race. We'll talk about GT3s as well then, where Chris Lullum as well as Diogo Pinto built up a 10-second advantage and then coasted until the advantage was ripped away from them and they built it up once again. 5 seconds at the line between them and Alexei Nesov in the Urano Esports HP car, who gets Urano back up to the podium spots. Johan Royer in the Apex Racing Academy car, ending up being able to defend from Apex Racing Team's Elvis Rankin, who, after Luke McEwen did not set a representative qualifying time, had a lot of work to do. Rankin brings him up to 4th. Wenzel in the Grid and Go Esports car and debut in the competition in the top 5 with Arnage, Team PGZ, Apex Racing Team Hard Mode, and BS Competition, the rest of your top 10. Down in the 11th spot, we find ourselves with Norby Kish in the BS Competition car, Urano Esports Hiking Media, and then Japard Esports scored on your leading lap. First car 1 lap down, a second Japard Esports car, while the ATRS Esports number 13 was a little bit played around with the LMDHs today. They still get 15th in front of Delatraz Automotive and Arvensis Racing. Mag Performance SRT recovered to finish 5 laps down, while the Arnage competition car scored as your first retiree. Steinbratton, a handful of the cars really struggling along with the Ahmed School of Motoring powered by Kellogg's 099, BMW M SIM Cup Privateer, and then Arnage Competition Pink, rounding out the 23 finishing cars. We'll head on straight down to our winners, where Dominic Hoffman is standing by. Dominic, a little bit of a nutty race for us here in the commentary booth, with plenty of stuff happening on track, and also a very open pit stop strategy window. What did you guys think about heading into this race, especially knowing that you and your teammates didn't all go for the same strategy?
Well, we didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. Prep was a bit up and down during the week, and well, let's say the last 2 weeks, reverting back and forth between different approaches. But the strat was quite clear from the beginning, and it was sort of adjustable as to when you would want to put which driver in, which was different for all 3 teams, or I guess more or less, yeah, all 3 teams. So all of us did more or less the same, but just at different points. And we knew, alluding to your point about having a nutty race, it wasn't any less nutty from the cockpit, I can tell you. It was just for the first time in, I think, whatever amount of rounds we did. I think it's I think it's the 4th round now. I think for the first time we fit Q. That made life a lot less difficult than it was in previous rounds. So yeah, it wasn't ever in like safe hands, or it was in safe hands with Danny driving, apart from that one moment he had with Redline, which he's deeply sorry about, I can tell you. And other than that, it was yeah, only on the last lap we started feeling secure about having the victory.
I feel like I probably asked you this question a bunch because we seem to talk about it every time we see Urano out in this LMDH car. You guys have really found a groove, you really clicked with it. Maybe not always in qualifying. We saw you have to work your way through the field last time in this BMW M SIM Cup. Not such a big fight through the field this time. What's the difference in this car between qualifying and race trim? Why do you guys have such a big gap in race trim compared to the rest of the iRacing world?
I don't really know. As in, if I knew it, I probably wouldn't tell you either, but if I'm not really sure about it. It's just the way everyone clicks with how you have to approach how you manage a stint, how you manage traffic, how you manage your fuel and everything. I think that's where all of the LMDH lineup of our guys really clicks well with it. And we've not always seen the best performances in qualifying, as you've said, but in race trim, we usually like to focus our prep on race trim, which is why we most of the time end up having a much quicker race car than a qualifying car. But for a change, it was nice to hit Q for once, and it made life a lot less difficult.
Especially that first cycle through traffic, I'm sure. Let's ask about the next round. We head to Watkins Glen, and I'm sure that's going to be a race where everyone is focused on their preparation, because that will, of course, build to the next of our VCO Grand Slams, the iRacing 6 Hours of the Glen. Is that going to be a race where you're going to have to make sure you're on top form for qualifying as well, given that traffic management there with the high speeds is a lot more risky than it was here today?
I think in general, if you take the last special event, which somewhat clashed with a Sim Cup event, which was Sebring, for any Sim Cup event, qualifying is a lot more important than, let's say, a 12-hour race, because you only have you only have a fifth of the time to make up your places, or is it 6 or 5? I don't know. And at any rate, you have 10 hours less to make up the time in Sebring, and it's gonna be somewhat the same trend in Watkins. So in terms of Q prep, it's probably going to be a lot more important for Sim Cup than it is for the 6-hour race, but nevertheless still important, obviously. So for Sim Cup, we're probably going to be looking at maximizing Q again, as we did this time, or as we luckily managed this time, and we will see if we can repeat that in Watkins.
Just making sure that I make sure that you're ready for qualifying next round, because I've got the expectations set high. Congratulations, Dominic. 1 and 2 for Urano. Great performance here at the Nürburgring.
Yeah, thank you.
Dominic Hoffman joins us from the Urano Esports camp, and we'll make our way over to the GT3 winners as well, although for Diogo Pinto it wasn't without drama. Diogo, great first stint, let's start there. 10-second lead built up. How are you feeling behind the wheel of the car?
Yeah, the car felt great. I managed to put a clean lap in quali, and from there I was just managing the fuel, the tires. It's quite important to keep the temperatures low in this car, especially around this track, but yeah. I was a bit lucky in traffic as well, and just managing the pace, I was able to pull a good gap. Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Let's talk about the moment of drama then. What was going through your mind when you saw Chris through the hairpin, have the contact off into the wall, and then Alexei Nesov coming and trying to stick it side by side?
Yeah, well, that moment was a bit frustrating because last time at Road America I also got taken out and got some damage. So yeah, I thought it was over, but we managed to stay ahead. Yeah, but our car was really good. Even with the damage, we managed to pull a good gap, around the 5-second gap. So yeah, I guess in our unlucky moment, we got lucky not to take more damage and carry on.
I was going to ask what was the extent of the damage, because it was quite remarkable the fact that Chris was able to do a 1:55.8 on the fastest lap of the race, which was not his fastest lap or your fastest lap in the car, but it was faster than everyone else in that GT3 field.
Yeah, I mean the car was just perfect today. I think he had a bit of steering damage and some top speeds, like 1 or 2 kph down, but yeah, still I think just like I told you, the tires it's super important in this car, and Chris took care of them at the start, so even with the damage we managed to get the win.
Well, after your win in round number 2, it's back to the winning circle for you and Chris. Congratulations, Diogo, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time over in Watkins Glen.
Thank you.
Always great to have a chat with our drivers, and thank you for giving us a bit of their time. But Ewan, as we take a look at this schedule one more time, it's just under a month before we'll roll out in upstate New York and then finish up with the first half of this season. And what a first half it's been. Dominic Hoffman said that qualifying for Watkins Glen is going to be a little bit more important. He's going to put some focus on that for sure. But it is such a unforgiving track, old school in nature, and boy, is it a fan favourite.
It is, and it's synonymous with endurance racing as well, with the 6-hour race that's held there. So it will be a very exciting one indeed with the multi-class traffic we have now in this series. So, yeah, one not to be missed in 4 weeks' time, coming right in the sort of starts of summer as well. It can get quite hot. I remember a 6-hour race that was exceedingly hot there in iRacing one year, maybe 2021. It was unbelievable. So maybe that will be a consideration and a worry when we get there.
It is one of those tracks where we can see track temperatures up at 60, 70 degrees Celsius, so it is going to be interesting to see. Of course, before we say goodbye, let's just remind everyone who is watching us here on the iRacing Esports Network that next weekend, Ewan, is the most recent edition of the iRacing Nürburgring 24 Hours. We'll have 5 classes of competition as the Toyota GR86 joins the GT3s, the GT4s, the TCRs, as well as the 911 Cup cars to roll around the Nordschleife for 24 hours. And we'll have uninterrupted coverage here on RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network. What should we look forward to in just under 7 days' time?
Well, yeah, lots of action, lots of the traditional Nürburgring 24-hour sort of style of racing, lots of traffic, lots of difficulty, and a race of survival as well. Out of the 4 24-hour races, the big 4, as I call them, that is by far the most difficult, in my opinion, to get towards the end, purely because you're racing against the circuit more than you're racing against other people.
Very true, especially by the time you get to the end of the race when attrition plays its part and you're just trying to not hallucinate and to keep it on the tarmac. However, as we head out of the Nürburgring for this BMW M SIM Cup, it's with Urano on the rise in the LMDH class, it's with Redline proving impervious in GT3s. We head back stateside to Watkins Glen to wrap up the first half of the season, and don't forget you can join us on June the 7th at 1:30 PM Eastern for all of that action. For now though, for the team at BMW and for the team at iRacing, Ewan O'Leary alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you so much for joining us on RaceSpotTV and on the iRacing Esports Network. We'll see you in just under a month to roll out in Watkins Glen for more action in this BMW M SIM Cup.